You're listening to Mia Horror Stories, and today's story is I took a camp counselor job, but the lake has rules for those who come back. The screen will stay completely black, letting your imagination do all the work. No visuals, no noise, just a story that creeps under your skin. Don't skip a second, because every detail builds to the chilling end you won't want to miss. The girl climbed out of Lake Armitage wearing somebody else's life jacket. That was the first thing I noticed. Not the mud streaked along her shin, not the way she kept looking behind her at the flat gray water, and not the fact that the aluminum canoe drifting 20 feet offshore was empty. The life jacket was bright orange, adult-sized, with Carl D. written across the left shoulder in black marker. It hung so low on her narrow body that the bottom buckle knocked against her knees when she walked. She stopped at the end of the dock and said, very calmly, "I think I came back to the wrong place. My name is Evan Mercer, and at the time I was 22 years old, male, recently graduated from a state college in Pennsylvania, and carrying a credit card balance large enough to make almost any summer job look respectable. I had taken the counselor position at Camp Alder because it included meals, a cabin, and $900 every 2 weeks. The brochure showed kids roasting marshmallows beneath a pink sunset. It did not mention lost canoes, mislabeled life jackets, or children appearing out of the lake before breakfast. I was halfway through repainting the depth markings on the swimming dock when the girl came out of the water. The morning was cool for late June. Mist lay low over the lake, thin enough that I could see the wooded shoreline on the opposite side, but thick enough to soften it. Somewhere uphill, the kitchen exhaust fan rattled as it warmed up, pushing out the smell of burnt coffee and breakfast sausage. A woodpecker kept hammering at a dead birch beside the boathouse. The dock boards were damp beneath my knees. I set down the paintbrush. "Hey," I said, "are you hurt?" The girl looked at her palms as though checking. She appeared to be about 12. Wet brown hair stuck to her cheeks, and her bare feet were pale from the cold water. "I don't think so. Where's your counselor?" She turned back toward the canoe. It was moving slowly in the light breeze, rotating with each small wave. One paddle floated beside it. "I don't know." I stood up too fast, and my right knee gave a soft click. I had injured it playing club soccer during my sophomore year, and although the torn meniscus had supposedly healed, the joint still buckled whenever I moved carelessly. That weakness was something I hid automatically. I shifted my weight, pretended I had only slipped on the wet dock, and reached for the rescue pole hanging from the railing. "You were in that canoe," she nodded. "Alone." Another nod. Kids lied for all kinds of reasons. Fear of punishment, embarrassment, the desire to turn an ordinary mistake into a better story. I knew that. Still, the distance between the drifting canoe and the dock made my stomach tighten. She would have needed to swim at least 30 feet in water that dropped to nearly 20 feet deep beyond the buoy line. "What's your name?" I asked. "Lily." The girl was Lily Voss, 12 years old and female, a first-year camper from Albany, New York. I had seen her name printed on the arrival list, taped inside the dining hall, but the buses were not scheduled to arrive until after lunch. Her parents had filled out the standard medical paperwork: mild asthma, seasonal allergies, no swimming restrictions. None of that explained why she was standing barefoot on the dock 6 hours before check-in. Lily Voss, she looked surprised. Yeah, you're not supposed to be here yet. I know. The way she said it bothered me. Not frightened, not confused. More like she had already discovered that fact for herself and was tired of hearing it. I took off my camp sweatshirt and offered it to her. Put this on. She did, though the sleeves covered her hands. When she lifted one arm, water poured from the life jacket and tapped against the dock in a steady rhythm. I reached for my radio. Camp Alder used black Motorola handhelds because cell service around Lake Armitage was unreliable. The camp sat in the Adirondacks, northwest of Lake George, and several miles beyond the nearest town with a grocery store. My phone could sometimes send a text from the climbing tower or the northern edge of the soccer field, but around the waterfront, it usually showed one bar and refused to do anything useful with it. I pressed the radio button. Evan to Main Lodge. Static crackled. Evan to Main Lodge. I've got a camper at the waterfront. Can someone respond? More static. Then a woman's voice broke through. Say again. It was Mara Bell, 31 years old and female, the camp's program director. Mara was compact, athletic, and permanently sunburned across the bridge of her nose. She treated every problem as if it could be solved with a clipboard, a direct question, and a sufficiently organized schedule. I had liked her during staff orientation because she remembered everybody's name. I had become wary of her when I realized she also remembered every mistake. I have a camper named Lily Voss at the dock, I said. She came in from the water. The canoe's loose. A pause. What do you mean she came in from the water? She swam to the dock. Another pause, longer this time. I'm coming down. Lily sat on the edge of the dock while I used the hooked rescue pole to pull the paddle closer. The canoe had drifted beyond my reach, and the lake's surface kept lifting it just enough to make the distance seem changeable. Were you wearing shoes? I asked. I think so. You think so? I had sneakers. Where are they? She looked down at her feet. A breeze moved across the water and carried the smell of algae, wet pine, and gasoline from the camp's motorboat. Behind us, something metal banged twice inside the boathouse. The second bang was followed by a scrape. I glanced toward the half-open doors. You stay right here. Lily caught my wrist. Her fingers were cold and surprisingly strong. Don't go in there, she said. The urgency in her voice lasted less than a second. Then she released me and looked embarrassed. Why not? I heard something. So did I, probably a raccoon. It was. What was it? She stared at the boards between her feet. I don't know. I almost went inside anyway. That was one of my flaws, though I would not have described it that way back then. I hated looking afraid in front of other people. It had gotten me hurt before on the soccer field, at parties, in a car with a driver who should not have been behind the wheel. I confused hesitation with weakness and action with control. Standing on the dock beside a frightened 12-year-old, I felt the familiar urge to prove that nothing was wrong. Then the boathouse door moved, only an inch or two. A gust could have done it. The hinges gave a low, dry complaint. I stayed where I was. Mara arrived less than 3 minutes later, jogging down the gravel path with another staff member behind her. She wore a green camp polo, running shorts, and unlaced hiking boots. Her radio bounced against her belt. The man following her was Caleb Rourke, 26 years old and male, the waterfront director. Caleb had grown up in Maine, worked winters as an emergency medical technician, and spoke with the patient, measured tone of someone accustomed to people bleeding near him. During orientation, he had made each counselor practice throwing rescue bags until our shoulders ached. He kept his blonde hair cut close to his scalp and checked every life jacket buckle twice. The moment Caleb saw Lily, he stopped walking. "Where did she get that vest?" he asked. Mara held up a hand. "First things first. Lily, are you having trouble breathing?" "No." "Any pain?" "No." "Do you know what day it is?" "Saturday." It was Saturday. "Do you know where you are?" Mara asked. "Camp Alder." "You told Evan you came back to the wrong place." Lily looked at me, not Mara. It looked different. What looked different? The dock. Mara crouched in front of her. Different how? The boards were newer, and there was a bell. Caleb's eyes shifted toward the boathouse. Mara noticed. "What?" "Nothing. You made a face." "I didn't make a face." "You absolutely made a face." Caleb stepped onto the dock and checked Lily's pupils with a small penlight. He asked her to track his finger, then touched the back of his hand to her forehead. "No obvious head injury," he said. "She's cold, but she's alert." "I'm not cold," Lily said, even though her teeth had begun to chatter. "You're shivering," Caleb told her. "I do that sometimes. Everyone does that when they're cold." Mara stood and pulled me aside. "Start from the beginning." I explained what I had seen. Lily leaving the water, the empty canoe, the adult vest, the missing shoes. Mara interrupted twice to make sure I was certain Lily had come from the lake and not from behind the boathouse. "I watched her climb onto the dock," I said. "Did you see her swimming?" "No. I was facing the depth markings. I heard splashing. So she could have entered from the shoreline. Not without me seeing her." Mara looked toward the trees on either side of the waterfront. The shore was tangled with ferns and spruce roots. A narrow path ran north toward the staff cabins, but the soil around it was dark and soft from overnight rain. Bare feet would have left prints. Caleb unclipped the life jacket and examined it. "Who's Carl D?" I asked. He ran his thumb over the name written on the shoulder. "Old equipment label. Old how? Before my time." Mara took the vest from him. "It's not one of ours." "Yes, it is." She turned it over. The foam inside had hardened into uneven ridges, and the fabric around the straps was faded almost pink. A manufacturer's tag hung beneath one arm, its printing blurred. "We don't issue type II jackets anymore," Caleb said. "Not for canoeing." "Could it have been stored in the boathouse?" Mara asked. Caleb did not answer immediately. That silence changed the mood more than anything Lily had said. Caleb was not theatrical. He did not pause for effect. If he took time to answer, it was because he was selecting the safest version of the truth. "There's old gear in the locked cage," he said. "But that cage was inventoried on Thursday. And that vest wasn't there." Mara exhaled through her nose. "Okay, we're not making this stranger than it is." "I'm not. You're both doing it." I looked at the lake. The canoe had stopped drifting and was now caught against one of the outer buoys. Its aluminum hull made a light knocking sound each time the buoy rope tightened. Pause. Knock. Mara radioed the lodge and asked someone to check the arrival schedule. A counselor named Becca responded that the Albany bus had left at 6:30 that morning and was currently near Saratoga Springs. They had not reported any missing campers. Mara asked for Lily's emergency contact information. Lily pulled the sleeves of my sweatshirt over her fingers. "My mom's going to be mad," she said. "No," Mara replied. "She's going to be worried. She said if I messed this up, I couldn't come back next year." Mara lowered herself beside her. "Messed what up? Camp, you haven't even checked in yet." "I know." Caleb walked toward the boathouse doors. Lily stood so quickly that the dock trembled beneath us. "Don't," she said. Caleb stopped. For the first time, her calm expression broke. Her lips pulled tight, and she stared at the dark opening between the doors. Water dripped from the ends of her hair onto the oversized sweatshirt. "There's someone in there," she said. Mara looked at me. I nodded. "We heard something earlier." Caleb drew his radio from his belt. "Could be a staff member." "All staff are supposed to check in at breakfast," Mara said. "It could still be a staff member." The four of us listened. From inside the boathouse came the faint clink of metal touching metal. Then nothing. The smell of gasoline seemed stronger near the doors, mixed with damp rope, and the sweet, rotten odor of old leaves trapped beneath the building. Mara called out, "Camp staff, identify yourself." No reply. She tried again, louder. A gull cried somewhere over the water. The kitchen bell rang uphill, calling staff to breakfast. Its sound traveled through the mist in 3 clean strikes. Caleb pointed to the canoe. "We need to retrieve that before the wind changes." Mara looked from the canoe to the boathouse. "And we need to find out who's inside." "We shouldn't split up," Caleb said. That was sensible, ordinary. Exactly what trained camp staff should say when faced with an unidentified person near children and waterfront equipment. Mara studied Lily. "Can you walk up to the lodge with Evan?" Lily immediately shook her head. "Why not?" She looked at me, then at the water. "Because I don't know if I'm supposed to leave yet." A motor started somewhere beyond the opposite shore. The noise rose, thinned, and faded between the trees. Mara's radio hissed. "Program director, this is Becca," the voice said. I reached Lily Voss's mother. Mara lifted the radio. "Go ahead." There was a hesitation at the other end. "She says Lily is on the bus." Nobody moved. Mara pressed the button. "Confirm that." I did. Her mother put her on the Albany bus herself. She says she watched it leave. The girl beside us began rubbing her thumb across the cracked plastic buckle of the old life jacket. Caleb looked at Lily carefully, not like he thought she was dangerous, but like he was rebuilding the morning in his head and finding pieces that did not fit. "Someone needs to check the boathouse," he said. "And someone needs to verify the bus in person," Mara replied. "I'll go inside," I said. The words came out before I had decided to say them. Lily grabbed my sleeve. "No," she whispered. "You should come with me to the road." Mara turned toward her. "What's at the road?" "The bus." "It won't arrive for hours." Lily shook her head. "Not that bus." The kitchen bell rang again, though breakfast call was only supposed to ring once. Mara looked uphill. Caleb looked into the boathouse. I looked at Lily's bare feet and noticed a thin line of blood beneath her left heel, diluted pink by the water still running down her ankle. Embedded in the skin was a small triangle of green glass, the same shade as the broken bottles we had cleared from the old service road during staff orientation. The service road that ran behind the locked boathouse and ended at the lake. Mara gave us a choice. We could take Lily uphill, call the sheriff, and wait for the bus to be physically checked when it reached the county line. Or we could follow the wet footprints that had just begun to appear on the gravel behind the boathouse. They were small, bare, and leading away from the lake. Mara chose the footprints, not because she believed Lily's story, not because the noises in the boathouse had frightened her. She chose them because the nearest sheriff's deputy was at least 30 minutes away. The Albany bus was still more than 2 hours from camp, and wet tracks on gravel did not stay wet for long. "We follow them to the service road," she said. 5 minutes. We do not enter the woods, we do not separate, and we do not turn this into a rescue operation unless we actually find someone who needs rescuing. Caleb pointed toward Lily. She needs medical attention now. She has a glass cut. She came out of 58-degree water. "I'm fine," Lily said. Caleb ignored her. "Cold water exposure can look fine until it is." Mara rubbed her forehead. Behind us, the canoe continued knocking against the buoy rope. "Take her to the lodge," she told him. Lily stepped closer to me. No, it came out sharper than anything she had said that morning. Caleb crouched slightly, keeping his voice level. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to get you warm, clean your foot, and check your breathing. I'm not going with him." "Why?" She stared at the radio on his belt. Caleb noticed. "Because of this," she said nothing. Mara looked at me. "Evan, take her." That should have been the end of it. I should have walked Lily uphill, put her in the infirmary, called law enforcement, and let people with training handle the rest. Instead, I looked at the footprints. They began in the strip of mud behind the boathouse, crossed the gravel service road, and continued north along the tire ruts. Small heel marks, narrow toes, clear enough to follow. Someone had walked away barefoot within the last few minutes. "I can track them while Caleb takes her," I said. Mara's expression flattened. "No, it'll save time. You are not trained to track missing people. Their footprints in mud. That is not the point." The old irritation rose in me, hot and familiar. Mara had been correcting me for 6 days. Tie the canoe differently. Count the campers again. Don't stand on the climbing harness straps. Slow down. Ask for help. Every instruction landed on the same bruised part of my ego. "I'm not asking to search the whole forest," I said. "I'm talking about walking down a road. And I'm telling you not to do it alone." "I can go with him," Lily said. "No," 3 of us answered at once. A metallic crash came from inside the boathouse. This one was louder than the earlier noises. Something heavy struck the floor, followed by the rolling clatter of what sounded like a metal can. Caleb moved first. He took 3 quick steps toward the door, then stopped beside the frame rather than standing directly in front of the opening. "Who's in there?" he called. No answer. Mara reached for her radio. "Main lodge, lock the exterior doors. Keep all staff inside until further notice." Static. Then Becca's voice. "Mara, say again. Lock the lodge. Nobody comes to the waterfront." "Why? Just do it." The boathouse smelled strongly of gasoline now. Not the faint, oily odor that always hung around the motorboat. Fresh fumes, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. Caleb pulled one door wider using the edge of his shoe. The interior was dim, lit by pale strips of morning through gaps in the siding. Canoes hung from wall racks. Orange flotation cushions were stacked near the rear. The camp's 14-foot aluminum fishing boat sat on a trailer in the center aisle. A red plastic fuel can lay on its side. Gasoline spread beneath it in a shining puddle. "Don't touch any switches," Caleb said. "No radios inside." He unclipped his own radio and placed it on the ground outside. Mara did the same. The puddle had already reached a floor drain. "Where does that drain go?" I asked. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Under the building, toward the lake." Yes. The problem changed shape immediately. A missing child or an unidentified child was bad. An intruder inside a camp boathouse was worse. Gasoline flowing beneath a wooden structure full of dry rope, old paint, and marine batteries made every second matter. Caleb stepped inside. Mara caught his arm. "You said not to split up. I need to stop the spill. What if someone's still in there? Then they're standing in fuel vapor." He pulled free and moved toward the overturned can, careful not to let his boots scrape the concrete. Mara turned to me. "Take Lily uphill. Now, tell the kitchen to shut off the propane line closest to the waterfront and call 911 from the landline." "I can make the call from here." "No, you can't. Cell service is useless, and we're not transmitting beside gasoline." Lily tugged at my sleeve. "The footprints," she whispered. I looked over my shoulder. They were already fading. The gravel was drying as the sun climbed, and a light breeze had begun moving through the trees. "We need to go," Mara said. I took Lily's hand. Her fingers were warmer than before, which I told myself was good. Then I noticed her shivering had stopped. Caleb had warned us about that during waterfront training. Shivering could stop because someone was warming up, or because their body was running out of energy. "Can you walk?" I asked. She nodded. We moved uphill quickly, but Lily limped on the cut heel, and my knee objected to every steep step. Camp Alder had been built in layers down the slope toward the lake. The dining hall and lodge sat at the top, cabins below them, then the archery field, craft hut, and waterfront. The gravel paths were lined with roots and flat stones that turned slick after rain. Halfway up, Lily stumbled. I caught her under the arms. "You dizzy?" "No, you almost fell. I stepped wrong." Her breathing had changed, shorter breaths. "Faster. Do you have your inhaler?" She stared at me. "Your medical form says you have asthma. I don't have one." "Your mom didn't pack it." "She did." "Then where is it?" "On the bus." "The other bus," I thought. I pushed that thought away. At the lodge, the doors were locked. Becca opened them after I pounded on the glass. Rebecca Becca Shaw was 19 years old and female, a returning counselor from Burlington, Vermont, with round glasses and a habit of speaking faster when nervous. She had spent most of orientation telling us how relaxed the summer would become once campers arrived. At that moment, her face was pale, and she held a carving knife from the kitchen in one hand. "Put that down," I said. She looked at the knife as if she had forgotten it was there. Mara said lock the doors. She didn't say arm yourself. I heard something behind the pantry. "What?" "I don't know. The back door moved." "Did you check it?" "Absolutely not." Lily leaned against me. Becca saw her and lowered the knife. "Oh my God, is that her? I need the infirmary key." It's in Mara's office. Get it. Call 911 from the desk phone. Tell them there's a possible intruder, a fuel spill in the boathouse, and an unidentified child with cold exposure. Becca blinked. Unidentified. Must make the call. She hurried toward the office. The lodge was one long room with exposed beams, old couches, shelves of board games, and a stone fireplace that smelled faintly of ash even in summer. Staff breakfast sat untouched on folding tables, scrambled eggs going rubbery, toast beneath plastic wrap, coffee in silver dispensers. The normality of it made everything worse. 40 minutes earlier, someone had arranged bowls of grape jelly and tiny butter packets, while a child was coming out of the lake. I sat Lily near the fireplace and wrapped her in 2 wool emergency blankets from the first aid cabinet. The foil crackled around her. Listen to me, I said. I'm going to ask you some questions. You're not in trouble. I know. How did you get into the canoe? She looked across the room toward the windows. I woke up in it. On the lake, yes. Do you remember getting in? No. What's the last thing you remember before that? The bus stopped. Where? I don't know. Was your mother still there? No. Were there other kids? Yes. How many? She pressed her lips together. Lily, I don't know. Who gave you the life jacket? A man. What man? He told us not to use names. The hairs on my forearms lifted, but there was nothing supernatural in what she had said. There did not need to be. A man taking children off a bus was more than enough. What did he look like? He had a hat. What kind? A camp hat. Green, she nodded. Every staff member at Alder had been issued a green cap. Did it say Camp Alder? I think so. My knee began bouncing. I forced it still. Did he drive the bus? No. Was he staff? He said he used to be. Becca came back with the infirmary key and the cordless phone. They're dispatching fire and sheriff, she said. The operator wants us to stay inside. She said 8 to 12 minutes for the volunteer department, longer for deputies. Did you mention the bus? Yes. She asked whether it had been hijacked. Was it? I don't know, Evan. You're the one talking to the weird lake kid. Lily flinched. Don't call her that. I didn't mean, the cordless phone chirped in Becca's hand. Battery low, she said. Put it on the charger S in the office. Then do that. She left again, muttering under her breath. I cleaned the cut in Lily's heel. The glass fragment was shallow but jagged. When I pulled it free with tweezers, she watched without reacting. You're tough, I said. No, I'm not. Most people would complain. I don't like making people angry. The sentence was so quiet I nearly missed it. Who gets angry? She looked toward the windows again. Outside, the kitchen exhaust fan stopped. A second later, every light in the lodge went out. The refrigerator compressor died. The wall clock stopped humming. The room seemed to expand around the loss of those ordinary sounds. Becca shouted from the office. Power's out. Dorm knocked something loose, I called back. There isn't a storm. A fire alarm near the ceiling gave one weak electronic chirp, then went dead. Camp Alder had a backup generator. During orientation, Mara had shown us the panel beside the maintenance shed and explained that it should start automatically within 10 seconds. 10 seconds passed. Nothing happened. Becca returned holding her phone above her head. No service. Try the landline again. It's dead. It shouldn't need camp power. It's still dead. Lily pulled the emergency blanket tighter. He turned it off before, she said. I crouched in front of her. Who? The man with the hat. At the road, she nodded. Why? So the phones wouldn't tell. A vehicle engine started outside, not uphill near the parking lot, close, directly behind the lodge. Becca moved toward the window. I grabbed her shoulder. Stay back. Through a narrow gap in the curtains, I saw the rear corner of a white utility van moving past the kitchen. No camp logo. Mud covered the license plate. The van rolled slowly down the staff access lane toward the service road, toward the waterfront. Someone was driving it with the headlights off. Becca whispered, "Was that here before?" "No." "Should we go after it?" "No." The answer came from me so quickly it surprised us both. Then my radio, still clipped to my belt, crackled. Mara's voice came through broken and breathless. "Evan, do you copy?" I grabbed it. "I'm here. Do not come back down." "What happened?" Static swallowed part of her reply. "Caleb's hurt. We found the transmission cut." "Mara, nothing." "Mara, repeat." A burst of static, then her voice again. "The fuel line was cut. Someone locked the rear door from outside. Caleb went through the side window. Is he burned?" "No fire. His arm is cut badly. We need the trauma kit." The full trauma kit was kept in the infirmary. I looked toward the locked door across the lodge. "I'll bring it." "No, stay there. Fire department is coming. The phones are down and the generator didn't start." Silence on the radio. Then Mara said, "They may not know where to enter. The main gate is chained." My mouth went dry. "Why is it chained?" "I don't know. It wasn't last night." The camp's main gate sat almost half a mile uphill, where the gravel road met County Route 12. Emergency vehicles could not reach the lodge unless someone opened it. Becca heard everything. "I can go," she said. "No, I know the gate code. It's chained. There are bolt cutters in maintenance." And the van just went toward the lake. So what do we do? That was the time-sensitive problem, stripped of all the strange details. Caleb was bleeding at the boathouse. The fuel spill was still spreading. Emergency services were on the way, but might be blocked outside the property. The camp had no power, no landline, and almost no cell signal. Someone in a white van was moving through the grounds, and Lily, wrapped in silver foil beside the dead fireplace, might not be the only missing child. My radio clicked again. This time the voice was male. Calm, close to the microphone. "Camp staff, listen carefully." Becca and I stared at the radio. The man continued. "The girl needs to be returned to the waterfront before the bus arrives." I pressed the button. "Who is this?" A soft laugh came through the speaker. Not amused, more like someone acknowledging a predictable mistake. "You weren't supposed to bring her uphill." Lily stood so quickly the blankets fell around her feet. "He found us," she said. Then the fire alarm above us began to ring. Not chirp, ring. A full mechanical bell from inside the wall, hammering loud enough to shake dust from the rafters. There was still no electricity. Becca covered her ears. I looked toward the back hallway and smelled smoke. Real smoke, dry, bitter, and fresh, was coming from the direction of Mara's office, where the landline emergency contact files and only set of gate keys were kept. The man's voice returned through the radio. "You have 6 minutes before that room is unusable." The transmission ended. For 1 second, nobody spoke. Then Becca ran toward the office. I caught her by the back of her shirt. "We need the keys," she shouted. We need the fire extinguisher first. The trauma kit is in the infirmary. The gate is locked. Caleb is bleeding. I know. Then stop holding me. She twisted free and disappeared into the smoky hallway. Lily grabbed my hand. Outside, somewhere below the lodge, a vehicle door slammed. My knee gave a sharp, unstable shift as I turned to follow Becca. Pain shot up my thigh, bright enough to blur the room for half a second. I could still walk. Probably. On the radio, Mara called my name. From the hallway, Becca screamed that the office door would not open. And through the front windows, I saw the white van coming back uphill. The van stopped 10 yards from the lodge. Its engine kept running. Through the front windows, I could see only the passenger side and the smeared reflection of trees in the glass. No logo, no movement inside. The tires were wet with mud, and one rear door sat slightly crooked, as if it had been slammed against something hard. Behind me, smoke pushed out of the office hallway in thin gray layers. "Becca," I shouted. "Get back out here. I almost have it." Her voice came from somewhere beyond the smoke. The lodge had 3 exits. The main double doors opened onto the gravel circle facing the cabins. The kitchen door led behind the building to the staff access lane, where the van had passed earlier. A narrow emergency exit sat at the end of the office hallway, but it was now on the other side of the smoke. The infirmary was connected to the lodge by a covered walkway on the east side. Maintenance sheds stood another 100 yards uphill beyond it, near the water tank and generator enclosure. The main gate was farther still, at the top of the camp road. Downhill, the path split at the archery field. Left led to the cabins and dining lawn. Right dropped toward the boathouse and lake. Everything we needed was in a different direction. I pulled the nearest fire extinguisher from the wall and shoved it into Lily's hands. "Can you hold this?" She nodded, though it dragged against the floor. Behind the stone fireplace. "Don't move unless I tell you." The radio crackled at my waist. "Evan," Mara said. "Answer me." I pressed the button. "I'm in the lodge, office fire, van outside." "What van?" "The white one." A pause. Then Mara said, "That's not camp property." I figured that out. Caleb's losing blood. "I'm getting the trauma kit." "No, open the gate first." "I can't do both. Emergency services are more important than one kit." Caleb's voice came faintly behind hers. "Tell him pressure dressing. Tourniquet if needed." Mara came back louder. "Evan, go uphill. Avoid the van. Open the gate." I looked through the window again. The driver's door opened. I raised the extinguisher nozzle, though the glass separated us, and I had no plan beyond that. A man stepped out wearing a green camp alder cap. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, dressed in tan work pants and a gray sweatshirt. His face was turned away. He moved around the front of the van slowly, one hand held against his ribs. Lily made a small sound. "That's him." "You're sure?" "The hat. That's not enough." He walked like that. The man reached the passenger door. Then he bent down and disappeared from view. The lodge alarm hammered overhead. Smoke scratched the back of my throat. "Evan," Becca yelled. I turned. She stumbled out of the hallway coughing, her glasses gone, one sleeve pulled over her nose. She carried a metal cash box tucked against her chest. "You got the keys." "I got this." That is not what I asked. The key cabinet was empty. She dropped the box onto a table. Its lid had been forced open, bending one corner. Inside were staff files, a roll of petty cash, and Mara's red emergency binder. "The keys are gone," Becca said, "all of them." "Who forced the box?" It was already like that. The smoke thickened behind her. "Did you see flames?" "In the trash can." I dumped coffee on it. Coffee. It was there. That won't stop it. I know that now. A loud bang struck the lodge doors. Lily screamed. I swung the extinguisher toward the windows. Another bang. Then a voice outside shouted, "Open up, I'm hurt." The man in the green cap leaned against the glass. His face was pale and streaked with dirt. Blood darkened the side of his sweatshirt. Becca grabbed my arm. "That's him." "We don't know that." "He has the hat." "Every staff member has that hat." "He's not staff." The man hit the door again. "Please," he yelled. There was a crash. The van's windshield came into view as smoke shifted against the windows. It was starred with a wide crack on the driver's side. That explained the crooked rear door. The mud. The man holding his ribs. "Maybe," I called through the glass. "Who are you?" "Tom Keller, county electrical contractor." "Why are you here?" "Got a call about the power. Something ran into the road." "What?" "I don't know. A deer. A person." I swerved. "Who gave you the camp hat?" He looked up at the cap like he had forgotten it. "Found it in the van." Becca whispered. "That makes no sense." It did not. But the blood on his side looked real. The man slid down against the door. For one terrible moment, I thought he had been shot or stabbed. Lily began crying without sound, shoulders jerking beneath the emergency blanket. I unlocked one of the doors. Becca caught my wrist. "What are you doing?" "He needs help." He could be lying. He could also be dying. That's exactly what someone would count on you thinking. She was right, which made me angry. I opened the door only far enough to brace it with my foot. The man sagged inward. Up close, he smelled like sweat, wet soil, and deployed airbag powder. White dust covered the front of his sweatshirt. A shallow cut ran along his scalp. "Hands where I can see them," I said. He stared at me. "What?" "Show me your hands." He lifted both. "No weapon." We pulled him inside and locked the door again. Lily backed behind the fireplace. The man noticed her. His face changed, not recognition exactly, something closer to alarm. "Where did you get that kid?" I stepped between them. "Why, that's not possible." "What is?" He shook his head. "I saw her on the road." The alarm continued striking overhead. Becca said, "When?" 10 minutes ago, maybe 15. She ran in front of the van. Lily stopped crying. "I didn't," she said. Tom pointed toward the window. "You were wearing orange." "The life jacket," I said. "She came out of nowhere." I swerved, hit the drainage ditch, clipped a pine. Then someone opened the back doors. Someone, I heard them. "Did you see them?" "No." So the van was empty. I was alone. The rear of the van shifted outside. A dull thump came from inside it. Becca froze. Another thump. 3 quick impacts against metal. Lily covered her ears. "There's someone in there," Becca said. Tom looked genuinely confused. "No." The thumping came again, louder. For a few seconds, it was the worst thing in the world. A person trapped inside the van. A kidnapped child. Someone striking the doors with the last of their strength. Then the right rear door swung open. A plastic utility ladder slid halfway out and hit the bumper. The thumping stopped. Wind had knocked the loose ladder against the interior wall. Becca let out a breath that turned into a laugh, too sharp and too long. She covered her mouth. Tom looked at me. "What is happening here? We don't have time." Attempt 1 was the fire. Becca and I went back into the hallway with wet dish towels tied over our faces. Lily stayed in the main room with Tom, though I gave her the radio and told her to call Mara if anyone entered. The office door had swollen in its frame from heat. We used the extinguisher to knock the handle until the latch broke. Inside, the fire had spread from the wastebasket to the wall behind the desk. It climbed through paper notices and old corkboard backing, feeding upward toward the ceiling tiles. I pulled the pin and discharged the extinguisher. White powder blasted across the room. The flames vanished for about 2 seconds. Then an orange line reappeared along the baseboard. "There's something behind the wall," Becca shouted. "Electrical fire," I thought. But the power was out. We emptied the extinguisher anyway. The room filled with choking dust. The flames weakened, but continued along the edge of the floor. Becca grabbed the emergency binder from the hallway table and flipped through it. The gate keys should have been in the red box. They're not. There's a spare coded lock. On the gate, she ran her finger down the page. No, maintenance keeps an emergency chain key in the generator cabinet. That gave us a route. Out the kitchen door, uphill past the infirmary, across the maintenance yard, into the generator enclosure. We had partially stopped the office fire. The hallway was still passable, but we had failed to recover the keys, and the flames were moving through the wall where we could not reach them. When we returned to the main room, Tom was standing near the windows. Lily was gone. My first thought was the hallway. My second was the van. "Where is she?" I shouted. Tom spun around. "She was right there. You were watching her." I was looking outside. Becca ran toward the kitchen. I checked behind the couches, the front desk, beneath the stairs to the storage loft. The silver blanket lay in a heap beside the fireplace. The radio rested on top of it. Lily, no answer. Then I saw the kitchen door moving. It had not latched fully. I ran outside. The service lane curved behind the lodge, then split. One branch descended toward the waterfront. The other climbed east past the infirmary and maintenance shed. Wet tire tracks from the van crossed both lanes in a wide loop. Lily stood 20 yards downhill. She was staring toward the cabins. "Lily," she turned. A figure moved between cabin 4 and cabin 5. Small, wearing orange. For half a second, I thought I was looking at another child in the same life jacket. Then the figure stepped into view. It was a traffic cone tied to a handcart, being pulled by Daniel Ortiz, 43 years old and male, the camp's maintenance supervisor. Daniel was broad, bearded, and limping badly. He had wrapped a towel around one hand, and his gray work shirt was torn at the shoulder. "Jesus Christ," he shouted when he saw us. "Get inside." I reached Lily and pulled her behind me. "Where have you been?" "Generator house," Daniel said. "Somebody cut the main battery cables." "Was it you on the radio?" "What radio?" "Mara says the gate's chained." "I know, my truck S outside it." "Who locked it? If I knew, I'd tell you." He looked toward the lodge windows and saw Tom. "Who's that?" "Electrical contractor." Daniel's face hardened. "We didn't call one." Tom heard him through the open kitchen door. Yes, you did. No, Daniel said. I handle electrical callouts. Nobody authorized you. Tom pulled a folded work order from his pocket. Dispatch sent me. Daniel took it, scanned the page, and cursed. What? This number isn't ours. The work order listed Camp Alder, the correct road, and a reported transformer fault at 5:42 that morning. But the contact name was Carl Danner. Carl D. the letters on the life jacket. Nobody said it. We all thought it. Attempt 2 was the gate. Daniel said the emergency chain key was still in the generator cabinet, but the cabinet had been padlocked from the outside with a lock he did not recognize. Bolt cutters were inside the maintenance shed. The shed's main door faced the lane, while a narrow rear door opened toward the woods behind the water tank. We moved uphill together, Daniel first, then Becca and Lily, then me supporting Tom, who could walk but not straighten fully. The maintenance area sat above the rest of camp on a flattened shelf of land. From there, I could see the lodge roof below us, the dining hall to the west, and beyond the pines, a thin strip of Lake Armitage. Smoke leaked from one lodge window. The shed door was open. Daniel stopped. I locked that. Inside, shelves had been stripped. Toolboxes lay overturned. The bolt cutters were gone. Rear door, he said. We crossed the shed. The back door stood ajar. On it, a footpath ran through dense spruce toward the old North Service Road, the same road where green glass had been found. Mud showed fresh tire marks. Narrow tires, not the van. A utility cart, Becca asked. Daniel crouched beside them. Golf cart. Camp Alder had 2 electric golf carts. Both should have been parked by the dining hall. A radio message burst from mine. Mara again. Evan, where are you? Maintenance shed. Get away from there. Why? We found the missing bolt cutters. Where? At the boathouse. Caleb groaned in the background. Mara continued, and there's a camp cart on the North Trail. Keys are in it. Daniel looked toward the wooded path. I could map it now. The North Trail curved down behind the boathouse, past the old service road, then joined County Route 12 outside the camp perimeter. Someone had used it to move between the lake and the gate without crossing the central grounds. Can the cart reach the main gate? I asked. Yes, Daniel said, if the bridge is open. What bridge? The culvert crossing. A narrow wooden service bridge crossed the drainage ravine north of the cabins. During orientation, it had been blocked with sawhorses because spring flooding had undercut one side. Daniel had not reopened it. The radio clicked. Then the male voice returned. You're almost out of time. I looked at Lily. She was staring at the old north path. Time for what? I asked. The second bus. A horn sounded far beyond the trees. Not a camp horn. A vehicle horn, long and low, from County Route 12. Becca said, that could be fire rescue. Another horn answered from farther north. 2 vehicles. Daniel took off uphill toward the main gate. We followed, abandoning the maintenance shed and the locked generator cabinet. The camp road climbed steeply in 2 switchbacks. My knee began slipping with every 3rd or 4th step. Tom leaned harder on me. Lily's breath whistled faintly, and she kept pressing one hand to the center of her chest. At the final bend, the gate came into view. A red volunteer fire engine waited on the county road outside it. Relief hit so hard it made me dizzy. Then I saw the chain. It wrapped through both gate posts and the engine's front tow hook. The truck could not back away without tightening it. A firefighter stood on the bumper with a saw, trying to cut through the links. Beyond the engine, stopped nose to tail on the narrow road, was a yellow school bus. The Albany bus. Children's faces filled the windows. The fire engine blocked it from retreating south. A rock embankment rose on one side of the road, and a steep wooded drop fell away on the other. There was no room to turn. The bus doors opened. Mara's voice exploded over the radio. "Do not let anyone off that bus." At the same moment, a man in a green Camp Alder cap stepped down onto the road. He held a clipboard. From where we stood inside the gate, I could not see his face. Lily stopped beside me. "That's not him," she said. "What?" "That's the driver." The man looked through the gate and saw her. He dropped the clipboard. Behind us, downhill toward the lake, an engine roared to life. The white van. It was climbing the camp road. Daniel grabbed the gate and shook it. The firefighter outside shouted for us to stand back. The saw bit into the chain, throwing sparks. The office fire had driven smoke above the trees. Caleb was bleeding below us. The boathouse still leaked gasoline. Lily was beginning to wheeze. The emergency engine could not enter. The bus could not reverse. Then the chain snapped, not from the saw, from the gate post. The weakened wooden post tore out of the ground and swung across the road. It struck the firefighter and knocked him beneath the fire engine's front bumper. The bus driver jumped down to help him. The man with the clipboard ran toward the woods, and the white van came around the final bend behind us, too fast to stop. Daniel shoved Lily through the broken opening. Becca followed. I tried to move, but my knee folded completely. Tom and I went down in the road. The van hit the detached gate. The gate spun sideways and slammed into the fire engine, sealing the opening with twisted steel and splintered wood. The van's front tires climbed the wreckage. Then the fuel tank ruptured. Gasoline poured across the only road out of Camp Alder. By the time I dragged myself upright, flames had caught beneath the van. We were trapped between the burning roadblock and the camp below, and the children on the bus had started getting off. The first child off the bus was carrying a purple duffel bag and crying because nobody had told her where to go. Behind her, more campers crowded the steps. The bus driver stood in the road waving them back, but the fire beneath the van had spread to the front tires, and black smoke rolled across the broken gate in thick pulses. The volunteer firefighters outside the camp were dragging their injured man away from the engine. One of them shouted that the van's fuel tank could flash. Back on the bus, Daniel yelled. The children stared at him. He was inside the camp, separated from them by twisted gate panels and flames. To them, he was just a bearded stranger shouting through smoke. Becca climbed onto the broken gate post and cupped her hands around her mouth. Campers, listen to me. Get back inside and move to the rear seats. That worked better. Her green staff shirt was visible beneath the soot. The purple duffel girl turned around. Then a second child screamed. A boy near the bus's rear wheel was pointing toward the woods. The man with the clipboard had not run far. He stood beside the rock embankment, half concealed by brush, holding something dark against his leg. At first I thought it was a gun. Then he raised it. A flare pistol. Orange plastic, short barrel, still dangerous enough. "Everybody down," Tom shouted. The man fired. Flare struck the side of the fire engine and bounced beneath it, spitting white sparks. One firefighter kicked it away before it reached the stream of gasoline. The children surged toward the bus doors again. That panic nearly killed them. Too many bodies in one narrow entrance. Kids pushing forward and backward at once. A small boy fell between the steps and the road. The driver bent to lift him, and 3 more children climbed over his shoulders. Becca went through the gap in the gate. I grabbed at her. Missed. She ducked between the burning van and the broken post, using the fire engine as cover. Heat rolled across her back. The sleeve of her camp shirt darkened. She reached the bus and began pulling children out of the crush one at a time. "Rear emergency door," she shouted at the driver. "Use the rear door." Daniel turned to me. "We need to move the van. It's burning. If it cooks off beside the bus, we lose the whole road." "With what?" He looked downhill. The white van's rear axle was still on the camp side of the wreckage. Behind it, the road descended in a straight line for nearly 50 yards before the first switchback. Tom understood first. "Release the parking brake." Daniel nodded. "The engine's dead," Tom said. "We don't need the engine." We let it roll. We guided downhill. Into camp. Better than into a bus full of kids. The idea was terrible. It was also the only one we had. The front of the van was wedged against the fallen gate, flames licking through the wheel well. If we could pull the twisted steel away and release the brake, gravity would take it down the slope, toward the lodge, toward the cabins, toward the lake. Everything at Camp Alder was downhill. "Where does the road flatten?" I asked. "Archery field," Daniel said, "and after that, waterfront path." The fuel spill beneath the boathouse flashed through my mind. "We can't let it reach the lake." Daniel looked at me. "Then we stop it at the field." "With what?" "The camp truck. Your truck is outside the gate. The golf cart." A golf cart would not stop a burning van, but it might turn one. Mara came over the radio. "Evan, the north cart is gone." "I know." "No, listen. We found its tracks at the old culvert. Someone used it to bring children from the county road." I pressed the radio closer. "What children?" 3 sets of small footprints. Maybe 4. The tracks end near the canoe launch. My eyes went to Lily. She stood beside the broken gate, one hand on her chest, breathing in shallow whistles. The lake had not returned one child. Someone had moved several children through the North Trail, placed at least one in a canoe, and staged the others somewhere else. "What did you find?" I asked Mara. "An old camp sign, painted rules. It says anyone who comes back from the lake gets taken to the road before arrival. Rules for those who come back, not folklore, instructions. A system. The unidentified man on the radio had not been warning us about something in the water. He had been managing a handoff, a human one." Lily looked at me. "He said we had to remember the rules." "Who did?" "The man with the hat." "What rules?" "Don't use names. Don't go to the lodge. If you wake up in the lake, walk to the road." The clipboard man stepped out from the brush. "Lily," he called. She flinched. He knew her name. That was enough. Daniel charged him. The man fired the flare pistol again. Shot went wide and struck a pine trunk. burning materials sprayed into dry needles. Daniel hit him before he could reload. They went down hard beside the embankment. The flare pistol skidded beneath the bus. The man was smaller than Daniel, but fast. He drove a knee into Daniel's injured hand. Daniel grunted and rolled away. The clipboard man pulled a folding knife from his belt. Tom moved toward them. I caught his sweatshirt. "You can barely stand. He's going to cut him." Tom shoved free. The man slashed once. The blade opened Tom's forearm from wrist to elbow. Tom screamed and staggered back. Daniel grabbed the man's knife, wrist with both hands. Blood soaked the towel around his palm. The two of them twisted in the gravel, boots kicking against the rock wall. I tried to run. My right knee folded immediately. I caught myself on the broken gate and nearly put my hand into the flames. Pain climbed through my leg in hot bands. My body refused the order I gave it. That was the moment my flaw became useless. I could not prove courage by charging forward. I could not be the first one through the door. I had to stop pretending action was the same as control. I looked around. The clipboard lay near the road. The radio hung from my belt. The bus was beginning to empty through the rear door under Becca's direction. Firefighters were moving children north along the county road, away from the engine and van. The man with the knife was focused on Daniel. I raised the radio. "Caleb," I said, "can you hear me?" His reply came weakly. "Yeah, do you still have the motorboat? Fuel lines intact?" "Why, start it," Mara cut in. "Evan, what are you doing?" "Make noise at the waterfront. Horn, engine, anything." There was a pause. Then Caleb understood. The unidentified man had been using the camp frequency. If he had partners below, they would hear us. "Copy," Caleb said. I changed channels. During orientation, Caleb had shown us the emergency marine channel used between the boathouse and the camp truck. It was rarely monitored, but every waterfront radio could reach it. I pressed transmit. "The road transfer is compromised," I said, forcing my voice flat. "Move all remaining children to the canoe launch now." Daniel heard me. So did the man beneath him. The man stopped fighting for half a second. His eyes shifted toward the camp. That was the proof. Daniel slammed his wrist against the gravel. The knife dropped. Tom kicked it away with his good leg. Daniel rolled the man onto his stomach and pinned him. "Zip ties," he yelled. A firefighter threw a bundle through the broken gate. Tom caught it one-handed and bound the man's wrists. The clipboard man laughed into the gravel. "You think he's the only one?" "No," I said. I looked downhill. A golf cart appeared on the camp road. It came around the switchback too fast, bouncing over the ruts. A man in a green hat drove. Beside him sat another adult, and between them were two children wearing oversized orange life jackets. One child was limp. The cart accelerated when the driver saw the gate. The white van still blocked most of the road. "Move," Daniel shouted. The second man in the cart raised a can. Gasoline. He began pouring it over the children and the seat. Not much, maybe a quart, enough to control everyone around him. The driver held a road flare. "Let us through," he shouted. "Or we light it." Everything stopped. The firefighters, the driver, the children beside the bus, even the man pinned beneath Daniel. The golf cart rolled uphill until it was 20 yards below us. Lily began crying again. "That's him," she said, "the driver, the man who had given her the life jacket." He was perhaps 50, male, with a narrow gray beard and a sun-weathered face. He wore a camp alder cap, faded almost white. Carl Danner. It had to be. The man on the passenger side wrapped one arm around the limp child's chest. His other hand held the gasoline can. Carl raised the flare. "Open the road." Daniel shouted back, "The road's burning." "Then put it out." "We can't." Carl smiled. "That sounds like your problem." The golf cart's electric motor whined softly. One rear tire was nearly flat. The children wore no shoes. Green glass glittered in the tread. The old service road, the bottles, the footprints, all of it connected. Carl had used the North Trail to intercept children before the official bus reached camp. Whether he had lured them from a rest stop, used false transfer paperwork, or had help from someone connected to transport did not matter in that second. He had children covered in fuel. He had a flare. We needed him to look away. I unclipped the radio and held it up. "You forgot one," I called. Carl's gaze moved to Lily. His face changed. The smallest movement around his mouth. Possession. "You should have followed the rules," he told her. Lily moved behind me. I pressed the transmit button. "Now," I said. From the lake came the motorboat horn, one long blast, then another. Carl looked downhill. The noise was close enough to suggest movement at the canoe launch. The second man turned too. Becca ran. She came from the bus side, low and fast, carrying the red fire extinguisher from the engine. She discharged it across the golf cart. A white cloud swallowed the driver, the flare, the children, everything. Carl fired blindly. The flare struck the road and spun into the ditch. Daniel released the clipboard man and charged downhill. A firefighter followed. I dragged Lily behind the stone gatepost. Inside the powder cloud, the golf cart lurched forward. The driver had pressed the accelerator. It struck Daniel in the hip. He rolled across the hood and fell beside the front wheel. The cart kept climbing, straight toward the burning van. I could hear the passenger coughing, the children screaming, Becca shouting. Tom reached through the powder and grabbed the steering wheel. The cart swerved. Its front tire dropped into the drainage ditch. The vehicle tipped onto its side. The children were thrown onto the road. The gasoline can burst open. Fuel spread across the gravel toward the flare. I moved without thinking. Not fast, not well. I crawled. My knee dragged uselessly behind me. Gravel tore through my palms. I reached the flare 2 seconds before the gasoline did and struck it with the metal radio. It rolled into the weeds. The weeds caught. The fuel reached them. Flame ran along the ditch in a quick orange sheet. Heat struck my face. Someone grabbed the back of my shirt and pulled. Tom. His cut arm hung open, but he dragged me anyway. The fire passed where my legs had been. Becca reached the children. She pulled the first boy away by his life jacket straps. The second child, a girl around 10, was unconscious but breathing. Carl crawled from beneath the overturned cart. His face and beard were white with extinguisher powder. He held the flare gun. Empty, I thought. Then he broke it open and loaded another flare. Daniel was on the ground, unable to stand. The firefighters were blocked by the spreading ditch fire. Carl aimed at the children. Lily stepped out from behind the gatepost. Carl, he looked at her. She held the old life jacket, and with his name. She had picked it up from where it had fallen beside the lodge blanket, carried it all the way uphill, and kept it folded beneath her arm. "You said this meant I came back," she said. Carl lowered the weapon slightly. "It means you belong to the lake group." "No," Lily said. "It means you leave your name on things." She threw the jacket into the ditch fire. The faded fabric ignited at once. Carl watched it, only for a second. Becca hit him with the extinguisher cylinder, not the spring, the metal body. It struck his temple with a thick, ugly sound. Carl dropped. The flare pistol fired into the air. The flare sailed over the gate, crossed the county road, and landed against the rock embankment, where it burned harmlessly on bare stone. Carl did not get up. The firefighters crossed as soon as the ditch flame weakened. They secured both men, dragged the injured children north, and began working on Daniel, Tom, and me. The van continued to burn for another 12 minutes. The lodge office was lost. The boathouse floor partially collapsed, where gasoline had softened old sealant and fire later reached the wall. Caleb survived because Mara used a torn life jacket strap as a pressure bandage until medics could reach him through the North Trail. Daniel's pelvis was fractured in 2 places. Tom needed 47 stitches and surgery to repair a severed tendon. Becca suffered second-degree burns across her shoulder and upper back. My knee required reconstruction. The unconscious girl woke in the ambulance and asked whether she had missed camp registration. Carl Danner lived. That bothered me more than I expected. He had worked at Camp Alder 17 years earlier and had been dismissed after falsifying waterfront safety records. Police later found that he had kept old rosters, transport schedules, staff radio frequencies, and keys copied before modern locks were installed. The painted rules by the lake were not ancient. They were his instructions, dressed up to frighten confused children into obeying. The lake group was his name for children diverted from buses and moved through the old service road before official arrival. Lily had escaped when the canoe carrying her drifted free. The other children had not. By noon, the road was open. By evening, the lake was full of police boats. The conflict ended there. Carl was in custody. His helpers were identified. The children were accounted for. But while the ambulance carried me down County Route 12, I could still smell burnt nylon from the old life jacket. And every time the tires crossed a bridge joint, the sound came in pairs. Knock, pause, knock. The first ordinary thing I remember after the gate was a paramedic asking whether I had eaten breakfast. I was strapped to a yellow backboard on County Route 12, 20 feet from a burned-out van, and close enough to the fire engine that I could hear its pump cycling. The sound was mechanical and steady, pressure building, pressure releasing. Somewhere nearby, a child was crying because she had lost one shoe. The paramedic leaned over me. "Evan, did you eat this morning?" I looked at him. "What? Breakfast? Did you have any?" "No." "Any allergies?" "No." "Medications?" "No." "Last tetanus shot?" "I don't know." He nodded as if that answer had completed something important. My knee had swollen beneath my shorts until the joint no longer looked like part of a human leg. They had cut the fabric open along the side and packed cushions around it. Every time someone touched the backboard, pain pushed from my thigh into my teeth. I kept asking where Lily was. The paramedic kept telling me she was safe. That word became useless from repetition. Safe could mean alive. Safe could mean in another ambulance. Safe could mean no one was currently holding a flare near her. It did not mean she was fine. Across the road, Becca sat on the rear step of an ambulance with her shirt cut away from one shoulder. Transparent, burn dressings covered the skin from her neck to the edge of her shoulder blade. She stared straight ahead while another paramedic wrapped her in a blanket. Daniel was already gone. Tom was being loaded into a second ambulance, his injured arm suspended above him in a vacuum splint. He saw me looking and raised 2 fingers with his good hand. I tried to return the gesture. My hand shook too badly. The firefighters had extinguished the van, but heat still lifted from its frame in wavering bands. The white paint had burned away around the engine compartment. The door stood open. Inside, tools, a plastic ladder, coils of wire, and a melted dashboard had fused into dark shapes. Nothing about it looked mysterious anymore. That was worse in its own way. It was just a vehicle. A vehicle could be bought, stolen, given a false work order, driven down a camp road, and turned into a trap. The radio had been a radio. The rules had been paint on wood. The old life jacket had belonged to a man who understood that children trusted uniforms, adults trusted paperwork, and everyone lost time when several believable emergencies happened at once. No ghosts, no cursed lake, just preparation. The ambulance doors closed, reducing the world to white cabinets, straps, and the chemical smell of disinfectant. As we pulled away, the tires crossed the broken edge of the gate. The impact sounded twice beneath the floor. I closed my eyes. At Glens Falls Hospital, the doctors told me the knee damage in stages. The kneecap had dislocated. 2 ligaments were torn. The meniscus I had injured in college had split again. There was also a small fracture along the top of the tibia, where the golf cart, or the road, or my own weight had driven the joint beyond what it could hold. The orthopedic surgeon was Dr. Elaine Porter, 48 years old and female, a calm woman with silver-framed glasses who drew the injury on the paper sheet covering my mattress because I kept asking her to repeat herself. She said surgery would not happen that day. The swelling needed to decrease. They would stabilize the joint, monitor circulation, and schedule reconstruction after imaging. Will I walk normally? I asked. That's the goal. Will I run? She paused. It was a professional pause, not cruel, not reassuring. We'll know more after surgery. My mother arrived from Pennsylvania that evening. She entered the room carrying my phone charger, clean socks, and enough anger to make the nurse step aside. You could have died, she said. Hi, Mom. You could have died. I know. Do you? I looked down at the immobilizer running from my ankle to my hip. Yes. She placed the socks on the bedside table and sat in the chair beside me. For several minutes, She said nothing. Her fingers kept smoothing the seam of her jeans. Then she asked, "Did you help those kids?" The question was quieter. "Some people did. That's not what I asked." "Yes." She nodded once and looked toward the dark window. It was the closest we came to discussing bravery. By the second day, police interviews had begun. A state investigator named Martin Keene, 56 years old and male, came to my room with a digital recorder and a legal pad. He had the tired courtesy of someone who had already heard several versions of the same terrible morning and expected mine to contradict them. He started with the van, then the fire, then Lily. He asked exactly where she had been standing when I first saw her, which foot she placed on the dock first, whether she had said wrong camp or wrong place, whether the life jacket was buckled, whether I saw the canoe before or after I heard the boathouse noise. Details I had barely registered now mattered. I told him everything I could remember. When I reached the radio message, he stopped me. The male voice said the girl needed to be returned before the bus arrived. Yes, those exact words. I think so. You think? He said, the girl needs to be returned to the waterfront before the bus arrives. Keene wrote it down. Did you recognize the voice later? No, not Danner. I only heard Carl shout at the gate. Could it have been him disguising his voice? I don't know. He asked about the clipboard man, the golf cart passenger, Tom's false work order, and the man in the faded hat. He did not volunteer names until I asked. The clipboard man was Neil Pritchard, 38 years old and male, a former school transportation dispatcher from Schenectady. He had altered passenger lists and sent replacement pickup instructions to 2 families, claiming the main bus had mechanical trouble. The man on the golf cart was Wesley Pike, 44 years old and male, who had worked seasonal maintenance with Carl at Camp Alder years earlier. Tom Keller had been real. His company was real. The work order was not. Someone had entered the request through a subcontractor portal using stolen credentials and a prepaid phone. Tom had been sent to the correct address for a transformer fault that did not exist. The cap, I asked. Found behind the passenger seat, Keene said, likely placed there intentionally. So Lily was right about the way he walked. Possibly. She may have seen Keller after his crash and associated him with the person who intercepted her. Memory under stress is not clean. She said it before he came inside. I know. Keene did not dismiss her. He also did not shape the evidence around her fear. That made me trust him. Police found the temporary holding site 2 days later. Carl had rented an abandoned bait shop 9 miles north of camp under another name. The windows were painted over. Inside were folding cots, bottled water, children's snacks, sedatives, printed medical forms, duplicate camp shirts, and plastic storage bins labeled with first names. Lily's inhaler was in one of them. So were her sneakers. Green glass in her heel-matched bottles broken behind the building, where the children had been moved from one vehicle to the golf cart before dawn. Carl's plan, as investigators reconstructed it, depended on confusion rather than force. Pritchard redirected selected campers during transport. Wesley moved them along the old service road. Carl dressed the operation in camp language: groups, rules, transfers, waterfront procedure. If a child resisted, he told them They had broken a rule. If they tried to use their name, he told them names caused check-in problems. If they woke after being sedated or became separated, they were instructed to return to the road. The lake rule was written on an old sign because Carl knew children remembered strange instructions better than ordinary ones. The canoe had not been part of the original plan. Lily had woken early at the north launch, climbed into it while Wesley was moving another child, and pushed away from shore. There was no paddle inside. The wind and a mild surface current carried her south toward the camp dock. She had entered the water when the canoe struck the buoy rope. The second canoe was found half hidden in reeds near the North Trail. Inside were 2 adult life jackets, zip ties, a towel smelling of gasoline, and a roll of duct tape. Keene called that evidence of contingency planning. I called it what Carl intended to use if the rules stopped working. Camp Alder closed for the summer. Parents were refunded. Staff were questioned. County inspected the grounds, the bridge, the generator, the fuel system, every lock, every radio, every path to the lake. The lodge office was declared a total loss. The boathouse was demolished in August. Mara visited me 3 days after my first surgery. She looked smaller without the camp polo and radio. She wore jeans and a gray sweater despite the summer heat. A strip of medical tape crossed one forearm where she had been burned pulling Caleb away from the boathouse wall. She brought my paycheck. Firing me, I asked. The camp no longer exists in any functional sense. Fair. She placed the envelope on the table. For a while, we talked about Caleb. He had needed blood, surgery, and weeks of physical therapy, but the cut had missed the main artery by less than an inch. He would keep most of the movement in his hand. Then Mara said, "I should have sent you uphill sooner." "You did. I should have believed the situation was deliberate." We all thought each thing had an explanation. They did have explanations. "You know what I mean?" She nodded. I asked about the painted sign. Her expression changed. "What about it? Where is it now?" "Evidence storage, I assume." "Did police confirm Carl painted it?" "They found matching paint and brushes at the bait shop." "That wasn't my question." Mara looked toward the hospital door. "No," she said. "They didn't find his fingerprints on it. Wesley S. No usable prints." "That doesn't mean anything." "No." The sign had been old cedar, weathered enough to split around the screws. The lettering was newer. Investigators believed Carl had installed it during one of several visits to the abandoned North Launch in the weeks before camp opened. Believed, not proved. That was the first crack left in the official story. The second was the radio voice. Carl denied speaking over the camp frequency. Pritchard and Wesley blamed each other. A fourth handheld radio was recovered from the bait shop, programmed to Camp Alder's channels, but its recent transmission history had been erased. None of the 3 men admitted making the 6-minute threat or warning us about the second bus. Police treated it as part of the conspiracy. They were probably right. Probably became another word that stopped being useful. Lily's family did not contact me for several months. In November, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a card with a watercolor painting of a canoe tied securely to a dock. Lily had written, "Thank you for not making me go back down there." Below that, in smaller letters, "I'm sorry I lied about not being cold." I kept the card in the top drawer of my desk. I did not keep the newspaper articles. Carl Danner pleaded guilty the following spring to multiple counts of kidnapping, conspiracy, arson, reckless endangerment, and assault. The agreement spared the children from testifying in open court. Pritchard and Wesley accepted separate deals. The prosecutor said the investigation found no confirmed earlier abductions. No confirmed earlier abductions. That sentence appeared in every article. During the search of Carl's storage unit, police had recovered Camp Alder rosters dating back 17 years. Several contained circles around campers' names. Carl claimed they were behavior notes from his employment. Some of those former campers were interviewed. Most remembered nothing unusual. 2 could not be located. One had died in an unrelated accident years before. The other was a man named Carl Danner, had marked only as returned. No one explained what that meant. My recovery took 14 months. I learned to walk with crutches, then one crutch, then a brace. I learned how quickly thigh muscle disappeared and how slowly it returned. I learned that physical therapists could be kind while causing extraordinary pain. I also learned to hesitate, not freeze, not surrender, hesitate, to ask whether action helped or merely made me feel less powerless. My knee never became what it had been. It clicks on stairs. It swells before rain. Running is possible in short distances, though I no longer do it for pleasure. Becca and I stayed in contact. She finished college and became an elementary school teacher. She wears high-backed shirts even in summer because the burn scars cross her shoulder like spilled wax. She jokes about most things, not fire alarms. Daniel returned to maintenance work, but not at a camp. Tom sued the subcontractor and won a settlement. He still sends me a text every June that says simply, "Don't take any summer jobs." Mara left outdoor education. Caleb did not. He became the waterfront director at a day camp in Maine where no child arrived by bus, and every access road had cameras. Camp Alder was sold 2 years later. The new owners renovated the dining hall, replaced the cabins, and renamed the property Armitage Retreat Center. Their website shows corporate groups kayaking beneath clean blue skies. The old service road has been graded and covered with gravel. The north launch is fenced off. The lake looks ordinary in the photographs. That may be the part I find hardest. Water does not retain intent. It does not show where a canoe drifted, where gasoline spread, or where a frightened child climbed onto a dock wearing another person's name. Last summer, I drove through the Adirondacks for the first time since the trial. I did not plan to visit. At least, that is what I told myself. County Route 12 had been resurfaced. The shoulder was wider. The old camp sign was gone, replaced by a stone entrance marker and a keypad gate. I parked across the road. For 10 minutes, I sat in the car with the engine running. Then a retreat center van approached from the south. The gate opened. I could see down the hill between the trees, past the lodge roof, to a narrow silver section of Lake Armitage. Children were not allowed at the new facility, according to its website. Still, Someone had hung several orange life jackets on a drying rack beside the water. The van drove inside. The gate began to close. Just before the view disappeared, I noticed a wooden sign attached to the back of the new boathouse. Too far away to read. Fresh paint, dark letters. It could have listed life jacket sizes. It could have posted emergency procedures. It could have said anything. I did not go closer. The gate clicked shut. My phone had full service. Cars passed behind me. A delivery truck slowed, then continued north. Somewhere in the trees, a woodpecker struck a dead branch in quick, hollow bursts. I drove away before the sound could settle into a pattern. The shadows fade for now, but the stories never end. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and join our community of horror lovers. If you're hungry for more, check out the next video. Just remember, the scariest part is often the one you don't see coming. Welcome back to Mia Horror Stories. Tonight's tale, I work in a botanical garden, and the flowers learned my voice is best experienced in the dark, which is why the screen will stay black. No distractions, no flashing images, just you, your imagination, and the story. So sit back, relax, and listen all the way to the end, if you dare. The foxgloves turned toward me before the ventilation fans came on. Not all of them, just the 6 plants nearest the service aisle, their tall purple spires leaning several degrees through the blue-gray light of dawn, as if someone had dragged a hand across their stems and left them bent in the same direction. My direction. I stopped beside the irrigation panel with my key still in the lock and said, mostly to hear how stupid it sounded, "Good morning." A soft sequence of taps moved through the flower heads. Tick, 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 tick. Seed capsules knocking together. Nothing more. Then the ventilation system started. Louvers opening high in the glass roof with a hydraulic groan, and the foxgloves slowly trembled back toward the east-facing windows. I told myself the overnight air pressure had changed. That explanation lasted almost 12 minutes. My name is Mara Voss, 32, female, and at the time I had worked for 4 years as a horticultural technician at the North Shore Botanical Conservatory outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The title made my job sound more scientific than it usually was. Most mornings, I unclogged drip lines, scraped mineral deposits from misting nozzles, checked soil moisture, and removed dead leaves before visitors could notice plants were mortal. I liked arriving before the public. The conservatory sat between a county park and a strip of low industrial buildings near the lake. At 6 in the morning, the parking lot was usually empty except for staff vehicles and the white delivery van from a bakery in Shorewood. The glass houses glowed faintly in the dark like a row of aquariums. Like wind pushed wrappers against the curb. Gulls screamed from the roof, their calls distorted by the panes. Inside, every wing had its own weather. The tropical house smelled of wet bark, fertilizer, and something faintly rotten beneath the banana plants. The desert wing carried warm dust and the mineral smell of heated concrete. The seasonal display house, the place with the foxgloves, was kept cool enough for spring blooms, and the air, Their tasted metallic when the misting system had recently run. My everyday motive was simple: get through the morning checklist before the doors opened at 9. That week, though, I had an additional reason to work fast. The conservatory's annual donor preview was scheduled for Friday night, and our director had promised a responsive sensory installation in the seasonal house. That phrase had become the source of several staff arguments. It meant speakers hidden beneath planting beds, directional microphones mounted in the rafters, and a custom lighting program that reacted to visitor noise. The installation was called Resonance. According to the grant application, it would demonstrate the relationship between human sound and plant movement. According to the grounds crew, it was an expensive way to make lights blink when children yelled. I was checking the western irrigation zone when the service door opened behind me. "You talking to them already?" That was Eli Mercer, 26, male, our newest horticultural assistant. He came in carrying 2 coffees in a cardboard tray, his blonde hair still damp from a shower, and his work shirt buttoned wrong at the bottom. Eli moved with the nervous speed of someone who wanted every supervisor to know he was useful. He had been with us for 3 months and still volunteered for tasks the rest of us had learned to avoid. "I talked to all the plants," I said. "You told me that was a myth." "I said talking doesn't make them grow faster." He handed me a coffee. "Maybe you're just not saying the right things." I looked back at the foxgloves. They stood upright now, their spotted throats open and motionless. "Did you adjust the fans yesterday?" I asked. Eli set his own cup on the irrigation cabinet. "No, why? Airflow seems uneven." He glanced toward the ceiling. The nearest fan rotated lazily behind its metal guard. "Feels normal." It was before they kicked on. What was? I nearly pointed at the flowers. Instead, I unlocked the irrigation panel and checked the pressure gauge. "Nothing. Can you inspect line 3? It was dropping overnight." Eli crouched beside the bed, already pulling nitrile gloves from his pocket. I did not tell him what I had seen because I had a private fear I rarely admitted even to myself. I was afraid of being considered unreliable. Not incompetent. Unreliable. There was a difference. My father had developed early onset dementia in his 50s. By the end, he could describe things with complete confidence that had never happened. He once called the police because he believed someone had replaced the doors in his house during the night. Another time, he spent 2 hours insisting that a woman was whispering from inside the heating vent. I was 12 years younger than he had been when the symptoms began, but that did not stop me from cataloging my own mistakes. Forgotten keys, misplaced tools, names that took too long to surface, moments when I entered a room and could not remember why. So no, I did not tell Eli that 6 foxgloves had seemed to turn toward the sound of my voice. I drank my coffee and wrote "check airflow, west bed" on the laminated task sheet. Eli found the pressure problem 3 minutes later. "Split connector," he called. He held up a black plastic fitting with a hairline fracture along one side. Water had been leaking below the mulch, darkening the soil around the foxgloves. "Could make them lean," he said. That was my thought. It had not been my thought. Still, the explanation helped. Soft soil, uneven hydration, plants top-heavy with blossoms. One leaning stem could press against another, especially after the overnight misting cycle. Normal things often looked coordinated when you noticed them at the wrong moment. We replaced the connector and moved on. For the next hour, nothing unusual happened. Pruned yellow leaves from the hellebores, swept spilled potting mix from the visitor path, and reset 3 labels that had been kicked crooked by a school group. Eli told me about a landlord dispute involving a leaking ceiling and a mushroom growing from the carpet behind his couch. I told him not to touch it with his bare hands. Wasn't planning to eat it, he said. You don't have to eat a fungus to regret meeting it. At 7:15, the eastern sky lightened enough to turn the glass roof pale. Condensation loosened from the support beams and landed in irregular drops on the broad leaves below. The building clicked and shifted as the metal frame warmed. The seasonal house looked almost finished. Hundreds of spring plants had been arranged in curving beds around a shallow reflecting pool. White tulips near the entrance, blue delphiniums against the rear wall, ferns and moss beneath young birch trees brought in from a nursery near Madison. The foxgloves occupied the western bed beside a narrow staff aisle hidden from visitors by a low hedge. Small microphones had been clipped to black poles among the plants. Most visitors would assume they were moisture sensors. The sound installation had been designed by a university research team, but nobody from the university had been on site for nearly a week. They had loaded the control software onto a computer in the maintenance office and left us a binder full of instructions written by people who did not expect dirt to exist. At 7:30, Dr. Lena Sutter, 41, female, entered through the public doors wearing a navy raincoat over office clothes. Lena was the conservatory's director of collections, a precise, sharp-voiced woman who could identify most of our plants by seedling shape, but routinely forgot where she left her phone. She had spent 2 years securing the funding for resonance, which meant every technical flaw now felt personal to her. She stopped beneath the entrance arch and listened. Why is the west channel active? Eli looked at me. I looked at the speakers hidden under the beds. At first, I heard only water circulating through the reflecting pool. Then came a low hiss from somewhere near the foxgloves, too soft to be called static. It rose and fell every few seconds. I didn't turn the system on, I said. Lena walked to the control kiosk built into the wall. It's scheduled for testing at 8. She tapped the screen. The display woke, showing a dark interface with 4 green audio meters. 3 were flat. The 4th moved. A thin bar lifted halfway, dropped, then lifted again. Could be the fans, Eli said. The filters should reject continuous mechanical noise. Should, I repeated. Lena gave me a look. She did not enjoy that word. She opened the settings panel and muted the western microphone array. The meter went flat. The hissing stopped. There, she said, environmental pickup. Then the foxgloves rustled. A dry, localized shiver passed through the 6 plants closest to the aisle. The rest of the bed remained still. Eli turned his head. Did the fan change speed? No, I said. Lena had already returned her attention to the kiosk. Mara, could you check whether any microphone cables are touching the stems? Vibration might be transferring through the support poles. It was plausible, more than plausible. The microphones were mounted close enough that a loose cable could brush a leaf, and the hidden speakers might produce vibrations below the threshold of hearing. I stepped behind the hedge. The service aisle was narrow and damp, bordered by a concrete wall on one side and the raised planting bed on the other. The foxgloves rose above shoulder height from where I stood. Up close, their flowers looked less delicate. Each bell had a hairy interior, pale spots clustered inside the throat, and thick green sepals beneath the petals. I checked the first microphone pole. No contact. The cable had been secured with 2 black ties and disappeared beneath the mulch. The second was the same. At the third pole, I found a loose section of wire resting against a foxglove stem. There's contact here, I called. Eli appeared at the end of the aisle. That'll do it. Maybe. I reached toward the cable. Flower head beside my hand shifted. Not much. An inch, perhaps. I froze. The stem moved again, bending toward the speaker clipped to my collar. We all wore small radios during setup days. Mine had been quiet since I arrived. The earpiece hung loose because I disliked wearing it, and the microphone sat near my left shoulder. I took one step backward. The flower slowly returned to its original position. Mara, Eli said, come here. He squeezed into the aisle. What am I looking at? This plant. He looked at it. Nothing happened. I felt foolish immediately, not gradually. The sensation was sharp and physical, like missing a step in the dark. Say something, I told him. To the plant, anything. Eli leaned closer. Your leaves look very healthy. The foxglove did not move. He glanced at me. Maybe it prefers compliments about the flowers. Try again. Good morning, flower. Still nothing. Lena called from the kiosk. Are the cables touching? One was, Eli answered. Secure it and test the channel. I took a fresh cable tie from my pocket and fastened the wire to the pole. My fingers felt clumsy. When I finished, Eli backed out of the aisle, but I remained beside the bed. West channel unmuting, Lena said. The hidden speaker produced a soft click. Then my own voice came from beneath the flowers. Good morning. The recording was quiet and slightly distorted, stripped of warmth by the small speaker. It was the phrase I had spoken when I first entered the house. Eli's smile disappeared. The 6 foxgloves tilted toward the sound, not together. That would have been easier to dismiss as a mechanical effect. They moved one after another, beginning with the nearest stem and continuing down the bed in a staggered sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Their petals brushed with a papery sound. Lena stared at the bed. The recording played again. Good morning. The plants leaned farther. Eli whispered, Is that part of the program? No, Lena said. The recording cut off. For several seconds, nobody moved. Water continued spilling over the edge of the reflecting pool. A truck changed gears on the road beyond the conservatory. Somewhere in the tropical house, a metal cart struck a doorframe with a hollow bang. Lena crossed to the kiosk and opened the audio archive. The screen displayed a list of captured clips, each marked with a time and microphone location. Most were labeled as environmental noise: fan hum, water flow, footsteps. My recording had been saved at 6:03 a.m. It had also been played back at 6:17 and again at 6:41, times when the sound system was supposed to be disabled. Software glitch, Lena said. Her tone had changed. She was no longer correcting us. She was trying out the explanation for herself. Eli pointed at the screen. Why would it keep choosing Mara? The system stores short vocal samples for calibration. Mine too. Lena checked the archive. There were clips of Eli coughing, laughing, and talking about the mushroom behind his couch. None had been played back. Only mine. Lena closed the archive window. We need to decide whether to call the university team now or continue with the scheduled test. Call them, I said. We have 72 hours before the donor event. That seems like a reason to call them. It is also a reason not to shut down before we know whether the issue is serious. Eli looked from Lena to me. He wanted to be helpful. He also wanted to see what happened next. I recognized the conflict because some part of me felt it too. Lena placed her finger above the full system activation button. If we run one controlled cycle, she said, we can document the fault properly. Video, audio logs, environmental readings. Then the university cannot blame our setup. Behind me, a foxglove capsule tapped against its neighbor. Tick. Lena waited. Through the glass roof, the morning sun reached the western bed. The flowers cast long, narrow shadows across the mulch, all angled away from the light, and toward the service aisle where I was standing. We had two choices: shut the installation down and report a software malfunction we could barely explain, or activate the full array and collect enough evidence to understand why it kept replaying my voice. At 8 o'clock, the conservatory staff would begin arriving. At 9, the public doors would open. Lena's finger still hovered over the screen. Your call, Mara, she said. Lena ran the controlled cycle. That was the first mistake. The second was that I agreed to stand inside the service aisle while she did it. At 7:48 a.m., Eli positioned his phone on a tripod facing the western bed. Lena opened the environmental monitoring panel and read out the baseline figures. 71% humidity, 63 degrees Fahrenheit, airflow steady at 2.1 feet per second. The irrigation zone was off. The misting valves were closed. Every variable we could think of had been fixed or measured. I stood behind the hedge with my radio clipped to my shoulder and 6 foxgloves at eye level. Say the phrase normally, Lena called. I glanced at Eli. This is normal, normal adjacent, he said. I faced the nearest microphone. Good morning. My voice sounded too loud in the glass house. It traveled beneath the steel beams, returned faintly from the far wall, and disappeared under the constant splash of the reflecting pool. The foxgloves did not move. Lena watched the audio meter. Again, good morning, nothing. A small portion of me relaxed. I had started imagining how the incident would sound when repeated later. Mara thought the flowers recognized her. Mara made everyone stop working because some stems bent in wet soil. Playback, Lena said. My recorded voice came from the hidden speaker. Good morning. The first foxglove leaned. Then the second. The third followed with a small jerk, its lowest flowers shaking hard enough to release a few pale grains of pollen. Eli made a noise under his breath. The fourth stem moved, but instead of leaning toward the speaker, it dipped toward me. Its upper flowers brushed the sleeve of my work shirt. I stepped back and hit the concrete wall. The remaining two bent in the same direction, not toward the sound, toward my body. "Stop the playback," I said. Lena muted the channel. The plants remained bent for several seconds before rising unevenly. One stem did not recover. It stayed folded near its base, hanging across the aisle. Eli approached the hedge. "Did you touch it?" "No. Did it touch you?" "That isn't the same thing." He looked embarrassed. "I'm asking for the record." Lena came around the bed, carrying a handheld airflow meter. She moved it through the aisle at shoulder height, then near the soil. "No meaningful change," she said. "I know. I'm confirming it." She inspected the damaged plant. The stem had creased 2 inches above the mulch. A thin line of clear sap shone along the break. "Top heavy," she said, "and the soil is saturated." The other 5 leaned too. I saw them, toward me. "I saw that too, Mara." Her patience had become brittle, each word laid down carefully so it would not crack. Lena was not dismissing me. That almost made it worse. Eli replayed the video on his phone. The recording showed the movement clearly, though the wide angle flattened the depth of the bed. From the camera's perspective, the stems could have been bending toward the speaker, the aisle, or the wall behind me. Then his phone made a chiming sound. The conservatory lights flickered. Once, twice. The pumps beneath the reflecting pool stopped. The sudden absence of running water exposed dozens of smaller noises, droplets falling from leaves, fan bearings whining overhead, Eli's thumb scraping across his phone case. Lena looked toward the roof. That wasn't scheduled. A second later, every ventilation fan shut down. The emergency lights came on along the floor, staining the paths a weak amber. The seasonal house began warming almost immediately. It was not dramatic. There was no rush of hot air, only the slow loss of movement against my face. Lena pulled out her phone. "Facilities." She called our building engineer, listened for several seconds, then lowered the phone. No answer. "He usually gets here at 7, I said. "He texted me last night. Doctor's appointment." "When's he due in?" 10:30. Eli checked the control kiosk. "It's on battery backup." "For how long?" Lena tapped through 3 screens. 26 minutes. The conservation system protected the computers and sensors, not the greenhouse machinery. The ventilation motors, pumps, and motorized roof louvers required main power. Without them, the glass houses would trap heat as the sun rose. The seasonal display could tolerate a gradual increase. The alpine collection in propagation could not. Lena looked at the time. "We need to find out whether this is the building or the neighborhood." I checked my phone. No outage alert. Outside the glass, the bakery van was still running in the parking lot. Across the access road, security lights glowed over the loading doors of a plumbing warehouse. "Our building," I said. Eli pointed toward the roof. "Can we open the vents manually?" "Some of them," Lena said. "Not from here." The manual controls were in the lower mechanical corridor beneath the conservatory. Technically, staff were not supposed to enter the corridor alone. It housed electrical panels, steam pipes, water treatment equipment, and the old service tunnel connecting the original glass house to the newer visitor center. Before I could say anything, a radio crackled at Lena's belt. A woman's voice broke through in fragments. "Ina, are you propagation alarm?" Lena raised the radio. "Say again." Static, then temperature climbing. Backup cooling didn't engage. The speaker was Nora Bell, 58, female, the senior propagator. Nora had worked at the conservatory longer than anyone except the grounds supervisor, and she distrusted new technology with a consistency that bordered on principle. She also managed the rare plant collection with the protectiveness of a person guarding a hospital ward. Lena pressed the transmit button. "Are you in propagation now?" "Yes." Lights went out while I was checking trays. "Can you open the exterior vents?" "South vent is jammed. North one moves about 4 inches. "What's the temperature?" 67 and rising. The alpine chamber was supposed to remain below 60. Lena checked the wall clock. "We need facilities here now." "I already called Walter," Nora said. No answer. "He's at an appointment." A pause. "Of course he is." Nora's voice disappeared into static. Lena looked at us. "Eli, go help her move the most sensitive trays into cold storage." Eli hesitated. "What about the test?" "The test is over." The control kiosk emitted a soft notification tone. A new audio file appeared in the archive. None of us had spoken near the microphone. The file was 12 seconds long and labeled West Array voice detected. Eli tapped it before Lena could stop him. At first, the speaker produced only the sound of rustling leaves. Then my voice said, "The test is over." It was not the sentence as I had just heard Lena say it. It was my voice, copied with the flat rhythm of a recording assembled from separate pieces. The word test carried the sharper tone from when I had asked whether the system was part of the program. The word oversounded clipped, borrowed from another conversation. The result was recognizably me and completely wrong. Eli stopped playback. No one spoke. The foxgloves nearest the speaker trembled in the still air. Lena leaned over the screen. "That's not raw audio." "What does that mean?" Eli asked. "It means the software generated the phrase. I thought it only recorded samples." "So did I." I stared at the archive entry. "Can the system construct speech?" "It was not supposed to." "Could someone have changed the program?" Lena did not answer. The battery timer dropped to 19 minutes. From the direction of the tropical house came a metallic thump, followed by the slow electronic pulse of an alarm. The radios crackled again. Nora's voice came through more clearly this time. "Lena, cold storage isn't responding." "What do you mean?" "Door controls are dead. The electronic latch won't release. There's a manual key." "I'm looking at the cabinet. The key isn't here." Lena swore quietly. The cold room held backup plant material, seed collections, temperature-sensitive chemicals, and the nearest supply of portable cooling packs. Without access, Nora could not protect the alpine specimens. Eli picked up his tripod. "I'll go." "Take the north path," Lena said. "The automatic fire doors may close if the backup system loses power." He left at a jog, his boots striking the paving stones in quick hollow beats. Lena called security. This time, someone answered. She spoke with Marcus Hale, 37, male, the morning security officer. Marcus was a former county corrections officer who treated every minor rule violation as evidence of a larger pattern. He was dependable in emergencies, though his certainty often arrived before his understanding. His response came through Lena's speakerphone. "I'm seeing a main breaker trip in the west utility room. Can you reset it?" Lena asked. "I can't access the room." "Why? The door's locked." "You have the master key." "It won't turn." "Is the lock damaged?" "Looks like something's inside it." Lena and I exchanged a glance. "What kind of something?" she asked. "Plastic, maybe, or hardened glue. I'm trying to clear it." "Don't force the key and break it." "I know how locks work, Lena." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Marcus said, "There's something else." "What?" "The interior camera outside the utility room went offline at 7:36. Before the power failure. 11 minutes before. The warmth in the seasonal house had become noticeable. Condensation no longer clung to the lower glass panels. The earthy smell of the beds grew stronger as the air settled. Lena placed her hand against the kiosk. "Could be vandalism," she said. "Someone blocked the lock, disabled the camera, and tripped the breaker." I said could be. "Who has access down there?" "Staff, contractors, university technicians." The final category sat between us. The research team had installed the sound equipment and connected it to our building network. Their cables ran through the mechanical corridor, alongside the environmental controls and security lines. Lena called the university project lead. Straight to voicemail. She called the second technician. No answer. The backup timer reached 14 minutes. A text arrived from Eli. "NORA fell. Need first AID kit. SHES awake." I was already moving when Lena read it aloud. We hurried through the central rotunda and into the propagation wing. The emergency lighting was poorer there, with long gaps between fixtures. Half the ceiling lamps remained dark. Seedling benches formed narrow rows under inactive grow lights, and the moist concrete floor reflected the amber glow in broken strips. We found Nora sitting against a potting bench with one leg extended. Eli knelt beside her. A metal plant cart lay on its side near the cold storage door. Several trays had spilled across the floor, leaving dark potting mix and tiny uprooted seedlings scattered around Nora's boots. "What happened?" Lena asked. "The cart moved," Nora said. "It rolled. It moved." Her voice was strained with pain and anger. I crouched beside her. Her left ankle was already swelling above the shoe. No obvious deformity, but she winced when I touched the outside of the joint. "Don't stand on it," I said. "I figured that out." Eli handed me the first aid kit. "She says the floor slopes." "It does not slope that much," Nora said. The cart had been parked near the center aisle, 10 feet from where it had struck her. 2 wheels were still rotating slowly. I looked for water, loose soil, anything that might have reduced friction. The floor was damp, but not flooded. One of the cart's wheel locks was engaged. "Was this brake on?" I asked. Nora nodded. I said both. The second brake was off. Eli examined it. Could have been bumped. "By whom?" Nora asked. No one answered. Lena tried the cold room keypad. Dead. She pulled on the handle, but the magnetic latch held. The manual override is inside the utility cabinet, Nora said, with the missing key. A high-pitched alarm began sounding from the far end of propagation. The temperature display above the alpine chamber read 72. We have maybe 30 minutes before we start losing material, Nora said. What material? Eli asked. Several $100,000 worth, if donors are assigning the numbers. 15 years worth, if you ask me. Lena's jaw tightened. This was no longer about a display malfunction. The collection was heating. A staff member was injured. Access systems had failed, and someone might have deliberately blocked the only room containing the main breaker. We call the fire department, I said. Marcus spoke through Lena's radio before she could answer. I cleared the utility lock. Can you get inside? Lena asked. No, the door opens 3 inches and stops. Something behind it feels like it. Can you see? Not much. There's no emergency light inside. A scrape sounded over the radio, followed by Marcus breathing harder. Then he said, I can smell something hot. Electrical, maybe insulation. Lena grabbed the radio. Back away from the door, don't enter. I'm not entering. I'm checking for smoke. The connection popped. In the propagation room, the alarm continued its thin, repetitive beeping. Nora tried to push herself upright. I put a hand on her shoulder. Stay down. We can't leave those plants in there. We're not carrying them anywhere if you make your ankle worse. She stared at me. Some of those specimens no longer exist in the wild. I understand. No, you understand the injury form. The remark landed harder than she intended, or perhaps exactly as hard. My first instinct was to defend myself. My second was to question whether I had examined her ankle correctly. Maybe the swelling was worse than I thought. Maybe I had missed a fracture. Maybe the cart had not moved at all, and Nora had fallen because she was rushing. That old fear opened quietly inside me, not knowing whether my judgment could be trusted until somebody else confirmed it. Lena noticed my hesitation. Mara, she said, stay with Nora. Eli and I will go to the utility corridor. You told Marcus not to enter. We won't enter. We'll assess the door. That's what he said he was doing. We don't have time to debate wording. The temperature display changed to 73. Eli looked uncomfortable. Shouldn't we wait for emergency services? Lena held up her phone. No signal. The thick concrete and metal framing often killed reception in the propagation wing, but our internal radios should still have worked. She pressed the radio button. Marcus, only static answered. She tried again. Nothing. The building alarm stopped. Not because the danger had passed. The display remained at 73, and the backup lights were still on. The sound simply cut off halfway through a beep. Every emergency light in the hallway beyond propagation went dark. The battery system was failing earlier than the kiosk estimate. From somewhere below us came a heavy impact, metal against metal. Then a voice rose through the floor vent beside the cold room door. My voice, faint, distorted, carried through the ductwork. Good morning. Nora looked at me. Eli took one step away from the vent. Lena's expression hardened, less from fear than from decision. The university audio cables run through the lower corridor, she said, so do the manual greenhouse controls. Another impact came from below. Marcus did not answer the radio. The alpine chamber reached 74 degrees. Lena switched on the flashlight attached to her key ring and pointed it toward the dark hallway leading to the basement stairs. "We need to restore ventilation," she said, "and we need to find Marcus." Nora could not walk. The phones had no service. The emergency lighting was collapsing section by section. We could evacuate and wait outside for firefighters, leaving Marcus unaccounted for and the rare collection to overheat. Or we could enter the mechanical corridor, where a blocked door, a failed electrical system, and someone's unauthorized changes to the sound network were waiting below us. This time, Lena did not ask me to make the call. She started toward the stairs. After half a second, Eli followed. I looked at Nora at the dark hall and at the floor vent where my stolen voice had come from. Then the cold storage latch clicked. The door opened by itself 2 inches. A breath of refrigerated air rolled across the floor, carrying the sharp chemical smell of preservative, and beneath it, something warm and scorched. The cold storage door opened just wide enough for a hand. Then it stopped. A strip of white vapor slid through the gap and crawled along the floor, thin as cigarette smoke. Eli flinched back from it. "Refrigerant?" he asked. "No," Nora said through clenched teeth. "Just cold air meeting warm." The explanation should have helped. It did not. The smell coming through the opening was wrong for a functioning cold room. Normally, the chamber smelled like cardboard flats, damp peat, and the alcohol solution used to clean cutting tools. Now there was another odor beneath it, hot plastic, faint but distinct. Lena wedged her fingers around the edge of the door and pulled. The latch clicked again, but the door did not move. "Something S against it," she said. "From inside?" Eli asked. "Has to be." I crouched beside Nora and tightened the elastic wrap around her ankle. She hissed and gripped the leg of the potting bench. "Too tight?" I asked. "No, keep going." Her face had gone pale beneath the freckles across her cheeks. The swelling had spread over the outside of her boot, and she could no longer move the joint without pain. "You need an X-ray," I said. "I need the backup trays." "You need both." She gave me a look sharp enough to cut wire. "Then stop talking and fix one." Lena turned from the cold room. "First attempt, manual ventilation. We restore airflow, then we get everyone out." "Through the basement?" Eli asked. "The controls are in the mechanical corridor. The utility room is halfway down. And Marcus, we find him on the way." The propagation wing sat at the northern end of the conservatory complex, separated from the public glass houses by the central rotunda. Beneath it, the mechanical corridor ran south in a straight line for roughly 200 feet. The basement stairs were beside the soil mixing room. From there, the corridor passed the cold room compressors, the water treatment station, the west utility room, and finally, the old boiler chamber beneath the seasonal house. If the university team had run unauthorized cables into the building controls, we would see them down there. That was the theory. The reality was that the corridor was windowless, partly flooded every spring, and now without reliable power. Lena handed Nora her phone. "Try emergency services again if you get a signal." Nora looked at the blank bars in the corner of the screen. "And if I do, keep trying. I'm not staying here alone. You can't walk. I can crawl." "That's not an evacuation plan." Their voices rose in the humid room bouncing off the polycarbonate walls. I stepped between them before the argument could become something worse. Eli stays with Nora. He looked at me. What? You know first aid, and you have a phone with video. Lena and I check the lower controls. I'm not letting you two go down there without the newest employee, Nora said. You'll survive the insult. Eli's jaw tightened. He'd been trying so hard not to look afraid that the effort had become obvious. Then the floor vent spoke again. Good morning. The phrase was louder this time. Eli spun toward it, knocking a tray of plastic labels from the bench. They scattered over the floor with a rapid clattering sound. For one terrible second, something scraped beneath the vent cover. Metal teeth dragged across metal. Eli grabbed the nearest object, a long-handled pruning lopper, and raised it like a weapon. The scraping continued. Once, twice. Then a small gray shape pushed through the vent grill. Nora screamed. A rat burst into the room, struck the floor, and ran beneath the seedling benches. One of its hind legs was caught in a loop of thin speaker wire, which trailed behind it and scraped across the grate. It disappeared under a rack of ferns. Nobody moved for several seconds. Then Nora said, "Put the loppers down before you cut someone's ear off." Eli lowered them, breathing hard. The terrifying sound had an ordinary cause. That should have reset the room. Instead, it gave us a new fact. I knelt beside the vent. A second length of black wire had been pulled through the duct, fresh copper exposed where the rat had chewed the insulation. This isn't part of the building wiring, I said. Lena crouched beside me. The cable was too thin for power. It matched the wire used for the hidden speakers in the seasonal house. It runs under the floor, she said, to here, apparently. Nora stared at the open vent. Why would the sound installation connect to propagation? It shouldn't. Everything shouldn't today. Lena stood. Mara and I go down. Eli stays. Eli started to argue again, but this time I cut him off. If we don't come back in 10 minutes, take Nora through the north loading door. Break the glass beside the crash bar if the lock doesn't release. Nora frowned. That door opens onto the service yard, and the service yard opens onto the road. What about the plants? We are past saving plants before people. The words tasted false, even as I said them. We were still going into a basement, partly because of the plants. Nora knew it too, but she did not call me on it. Lena and I crossed the propagation room toward the soil mixing area. The emergency lights in that section had failed completely. I took a headlamp from the first aid cabinet and pulled the strap over my hair. The basement stairs descended behind a steel fire door. Door was supposed to close automatically during a power failure. It stood open by 3 inches. Lena shone her flashlight along the hinge. A rubber plant tie had been looped around the hydraulic arm, preventing it from shutting. Someone did that, I said. Could have been maintenance. With a plant tie, she did not answer. We pushed through. The air below was 10 degrees cooler and smelled of wet concrete. Our lights caught a narrow staircase with yellow painted edges. The handrail was slick beneath my palm. Somewhere beneath us, water dripped at a steady interval. At the bottom, the corridor extended south, straight and black. Pipes crowded the ceiling, red for fire suppression, blue for cold water, bare steel for steam. The floor sloped toward a grated drain along the center. The cold room compressor station was immediately to our right. Its control lights were dark. 20 feet farther down, a red exit sign glowed on backup power above a cross corridor leading to the loading dock. Beyond that lay the utility room. "Marcus," Lena called. Her voice traveled far enough to return as a flattened echo. No response. We moved slowly. The first obstacle appeared near the compressor station. 3 plastic storage bins had been stacked across the corridor. Not fallen, stacked. Lena nudged one with her boot. It was filled with irrigation fittings. "Maintenance staging," she said. "Across an emergency route." She exhaled through her nose. No. We shifted the bins aside. The utility room door stood open 3 inches, exactly as Marcus had described. His key ring hung from the lock. The beam of Lena's flashlight entered the gap and struck something silver, a ladder. It had been wedged horizontally between the door and the electrical cabinets, preventing the door from opening inward. "Marcus," I called. A low groan came from inside. We both froze. Then it came again. Not human, a motor trying to start. The sound vibrated through the steel door, rose in pitch, and cut off. Lena leaned closer to the gap. "Marcus, can you hear me?" A hand appeared near the floor. I jerked backwards so quickly my shoulder hit a pipe. The hand did not move. It lay palm up, fingers gray beneath the flashlight beam. "Jesus," Lena whispered. I dropped to my knees and aimed the headlamp through the opening. The hand belonged to a mannequin arm. Pale plastic, cracked knuckles, a strip of green tape around the wrist. We used mannequin parts to display pruning techniques during children's workshops. This one had been tied to the lower rung of the ladder with speaker wire. Lena swore. Misdirection. Deliberate this time. Somebody wanted whoever opened the door to panic, I said, or waste time. We tried to pull the ladder toward us through the gap, but it was jammed behind the handle of a rolling tool cabinet. Lena pushed the door. The cabinet shifted half an inch, wheels squealing against the floor, then stopped. "Together," she said. We braced our shoulders against the steel. 1, 2, 3. The door moved another inch. Pain shot through my left shoulder where I had struck the pipe. I repositioned and pushed again. The cabinet rolled just enough for the ladder to fall. It struck the concrete with a crash that echoed through the corridor. The door opened. The utility room was empty. No Marcus. The smell of overheated insulation was stronger inside. One breaker panel stood open. Several switches had been pulled down, but the main breaker remained in the on position. Lena approached it carefully. "Don't touch anything," I said. "I know." A black scorch mark spread from the bottom of a smaller control box beside the main panel. Its plastic cover had melted around the edges. 2 thin speaker cables entered through a hole crudely drilled in the wall. The cables ran directly into the damaged box. "That's our fire risk," Lena said. "Can we isolate it?" Not safely. The first attempt had failed before we even reached the manual ventilation controls. The electrical fault was not a simple tripped breaker. Something connected to the sound system had overheated inside the building controls. Lena used her phone to photograph the wiring. No signal. The battery indicator showed 21%. From farther south came a muffled bang. We turned. "Marcus," I called. Nothing. The corridor beyond the utility room led past the water treatment station and beneath the seasonal house. Manual roof vent, chains hung in the old boiler chamber at the far end. Lena pointed at the open panel. "We can't restore main power, but we can still open the vents manually. And Marcus, we keep moving." We continued south. The corridor narrowed after the utility room. Moisture beaded on the steam pipes, falling onto our shoulders in cold drops. My headlamp illuminated chalk marks on the wall, old maintenance notes, dates, arrows showing shut-off valves. Then we found Marcus's radio. It lay beside the center drain, face down in shallow water. Lena picked it up. The casing was cracked. One side was smeared with blood. Not much, a thumb-sized streak. "Marcus," Lena shouted. This time, an answer came from ahead. Here, faint, hoarse. We followed the sound to the water treatment room. Marcus sat against the wall beside a fiberglass chemical tank, one hand pressed to his forehead. Blood had run down the side of his face and dried along his jaw. His flashlight lay several feet away. He squinted at us. "Took you long enough." Lena knelt beside him. "What happened?" "Somebody hit me." "With what?" "Didn't see." "Was anyone here when you entered?" "I thought I heard you." He looked at me. "Not Lena," he said. "You." My stomach tightened. What did I say? "Over here," came from down the corridor. That wasn't me. I know that now. He had forced the utility door wider, climbed over the ladder, and followed the voice south. Near the water treatment room, the lights had gone out. Something struck him from behind. He did not know how long he had been unconscious. "Could you have fallen?" Lena asked. Marcus stared at her. "I worked corrections for 8 years. I know what getting hit feels like." The wound on his forehead was shallow, but swollen. His pupils appeared equal, though he had a headache and felt nauseated. "Concussion. Maybe worse. You need to get upstairs," I said. "I can walk." He tried. His knees buckled immediately. Lena and I caught him under the arms before his head struck the wall. That ended the second attempt before it properly began. We had located Marcus, but now we had an injured man who could not climb the stairs without help. The manual controls remained another 60 feet away. Lena looked toward the boiler chamber, then back the way we had come. "We retreat," she said. "Get him to propagation. Eli helps carry." A metallic slam came from behind us. The sound rolled through the corridor. We dragged Marcus to the cross corridor and found the source. The steel fire door at the bottom of the propagation stairs had closed. The plant tie was gone. Lena pulled the handle, locked. "It shouldn't lock from this side," she said. "Can you override it? The release is powered." Marcus leaned heavily against me. Loading dock. The cross corridor offered a second route out. It ran west 30 feet to the dock stairs and an exterior door opening onto the service yard. We half carried Marcus toward it. Every step sent pain through my shoulder. His boots dragged, catching on the drain grates. Lena was breathing hard by the time we reached the dock stairwell. The exterior door stood at the top of 8 concrete steps. Lena climbed ahead and pushed the crash bar. Nothing. She pushed again. "Magnetic lock," Marcus said. "It should release without power, unless backup current is holding it." I looked through the narrow, wired glass window. Morning light filled the service yard. A delivery truck was parked 20 yards away. The driver stood beside it, checking paperwork. I struck the glass with my palm. "Hey," he did not look up. The door was thick, and the compressors, alarms, and pipes insulated the stairwell from the outside. Lena pulled the fire alarm. No sound. The lever came down loosely in her hand, disconnected from the wall by a cut wire. Someone had disabled it. Not software, not a glitch. A person had physically moved through the building, blocking doors, cutting alarms, and routing my recorded voice into the basement. Marcus sank onto the bottom step. "We break the window," I said. "Wired glass," he replied. "You'll make a hole, not open the door." Enough to shout. Lena found a fire extinguisher mounted beside the stairs. She pulled it free and swung the base into the window. The glass cracked but held again. A white web spread across it. On the third strike, a fist-sized section broke inward, still clinging to the embedded wire mesh. Fresh air pushed through. "Help," Lena shouted through the opening. "Call 911. The truck driver looked up. For half a second, hope returned. Then he turned toward the loading dock. A figure stepped from behind the truck. Person wore a gray conservatory maintenance jacket and a dark baseball cap. From inside, with cracked glass between us, I could not see the face. The truck driver said something to them. The figure pointed toward the main entrance, as if explaining where deliveries belonged. Then the driver climbed back into his cab. The truck pulled away. The figure remained in the yard, watching the broken window. Lena raised her flashlight to the glass. The person turned and walked out of sight behind the propagation building. "Who was that?" I asked. Marcus shut his eyes. "Not Walter." A phone rang. The sound came from Marcus's jacket pocket. He pulled it out with shaking fingers. No signal bars, no caller ID. Still, the screen showed an incoming internal call routed through the building network. He answered. For several seconds, there was only static. Then my voice spoke. "Go to the flowers." The call ended. At the same moment, a deep mechanical rumble began beneath the floor. The old irrigation pumps were starting. Lena looked toward the south corridor. They can't run without main power. Water surged through the overhead pipes. The metal lines jumped in their brackets. A valve released somewhere ahead with a hard snap. Then another. The center drain began filling. At first, it was a thin stream, clear water spreading around our boots. Within seconds, it reached our ankles. Marcus tried to stand and nearly fell again. "The water treatment tanks," Lena said. Someone opened the flush system. The corridor sloped south toward the boiler chamber, but the drain was already backing up. Leaves, soil, and pieces of black cable floated from the direction of the seasonal house. We could not climb the locked stairs. We could not open the loading door. Marcus could barely walk. Behind us, water rose over the first step. Ahead, the only dry route led south, deeper into the mechanical corridor, toward the manual ventilation controls and the old service tunnel beneath the foxglove bed. Lena and I lifted Marcus between us. The exterior door's magnetic lock gave a loud metallic clunk. For one hopeful instant, I thought it had released. Then the emergency shutters dropped over the loading dock window. Steel slats slammed down one after another, sealing away the daylight and the yard beyond it. The final strip struck the sill. Darkness swallowed the stairwell. We had no route back, so we turned south and carried Marcus toward the flowers. The water was just below my knees when we reached the boiler chamber. Marcus dragged between us, one arm over Lena's shoulders and the other over mine. Every few steps, his boots slipped on the submerged floor, forcing his full weight against my injured shoulder. By the time we crossed the threshold, my left hand had gone numb. The chamber was circular, built beneath the oldest section of the conservatory. The original boiler had been removed years earlier, leaving a rust-stained concrete pad in the center and a ring of pipes around the walls. Manual chains for the roof vents hung beside a metal catwalk. At the far side, a low arched doorway opened into the service tunnel beneath the seasonal house. A portable work light glowed inside that tunnel. Someone had power. Lena lowered Marcus against the old boiler pad. "Stay awake," she said. "I'm not taking a nap." His words were slurred. That is exactly what someone taking a nap would say. He managed a weak smile, then closed his eyes. I tapped his cheek. "Marcus." They opened again. The floodwater poured into the chamber through the north corridor and spread around the boiler pad. It carried mulch, plant labels, and lengths of black speaker cable. The water was cold enough to make my calves ache. Lena aimed her flashlight upward. 4 vent chains hung from a bracket 20 feet above us, accessible by the catwalk stairs. "If we open the seasonal vents," she said, "we relieve one house. Not propagation. The controls might connect. They don't. Then why are we here?" She looked at the illuminated tunnel. "Because whoever did this wants us here." A speaker clicked somewhere beyond the arch. My own voice said, "Good morning." Not loud, almost intimate. Marcus reached for his empty holster out of habit. Conservatory security did not carry firearms. He had a flashlight, a radio, and pepper spray, all of which were now missing or broken. Lena picked up a length of steel pipe from the floor. I found a valve wrench hanging from a hook and wrapped both hands around it. My left grip barely worked. "Stay here," I told Marcus. "Fantastic plan. If the water reaches the top of the pad, move to the stairs." With my excellent legs, another speaker activated. "Come closer." The phrase had been assembled from pieces of my voice, but the cadence was improving. Whoever had built the system had enough recordings now to smooth the transitions. Lena stepped toward the tunnel. I caught her sleeve. "No, we need the shutoff. Could be another lure. The flush valves are in there." So were the university cables. So was the person in the maintenance jacket. We entered side by side. The service tunnel was only 5 feet high in places, forcing Lena to stoop. It ran north to south, directly beneath the western planting bed. Concrete support columns divided it into short sections. Irrigation lines were fixed overhead, and bundles of new black wire followed them through crude brackets. Water flowed toward us along the floor, ankle deep here, because the tunnel rose slightly. 10 feet inside, we passed a speaker zip tied to a pipe. 20 feet farther, another. Then we found the equipment rack. It had been built into an old maintenance recess beneath the foxgloves. 2 desktop computers, an audio interface, a network switch, battery units, and a compact pneumatic control board sat on metal shelving. Clear plastic tubes ran from the board into the ceiling. One of the monitors displayed waveforms of my voice. The second showed live camera feeds, seasonal house, propagation, mechanical corridor, loading dock. The cameras were not part of the conservatory system. They were small black devices hidden among pipes and planting beds. Lena stared at the propagation feed. Eli was dragging Nora toward the north loading door in an office chair. Nora held the loppers across her lap. Both were alive. The door in front of them remained closed. "Can we talk to them?" I asked. Lena leaned over the audio interface. A keyboard had been left on the shelf. Beside it sat a paper coffee cup from the bakery van and a coil of green plant ties, the same green as the tape around the mannequin wrist. A man spoke from behind us. "Don't touch the keyboard." We turned. He stood at the tunnel entrance with Marcus's pepper spray in one hand and a long electrical screwdriver in the other. I recognized him after a second. Caleb Rusk, 34, male, one of the university installation technicians. Caleb had spent 3 weeks in the conservatory during the first phase of resonance. Was quiet, broad-shouldered, and habitually irritated by questions. He treated every locked door as a personal inconvenience, and every safety form as paperwork designed by people less intelligent than him. He was wearing the gray maintenance jacket and dark cap. Lena's face tightened. "What have you done?" Caleb laughed once, without humor. "You signed off on it, on an audio installation, on responsive movement." I looked at the clear tubing disappearing into the ceiling. "The flowers," I said. He nodded toward the pneumatic board. Microbursts. Low-pressure air at the base of selected stems. Directional, programmable. The soil was softened so they move visibly. The cracked irrigation connector, the saturated bed, the loose cables and carefully chosen plants. "They didn't react to my voice," I said. "The model reacted to your voice." "Why mine? Cleanest sample profile. Consistent pitch. You talk to yourself when you work." The answer was so ordinary it hurt. Every morning greeting. Every muttered checklist. Every private sentence spoken when I believed nobody was listening. The system had not learned me. A man had fed me into it. Lena raised the steel pipe. "You injured 2 people. Marcus followed a speaker into a dark corridor. He slipped. He was struck. He hit a valve wheel. Marcus's wound could have come from a fall. The blood on the radio. The nausea. The uncertainty. Caleb had built his sabotage around explanations that would remain plausible afterward." "Nora," I asked. "The cart was supposed to block the aisle. It hit her." I couldn't see the second bench from the camera. His voice sharpened, as though the camera angle were the real problem. Lena took 1 step forward, shut everything down. "No, Caleb, you were going to cut the project after Friday." Lena's expression changed, not surprise, recognition. Caleb saw it. "You told the dean the system was unstable." I told him unauthorized building connections had to be removed. Same result. You wired experimental hardware into environmental controls. Because your facilities department refused access, you bypassed fire systems to stop people interrupting the demonstration. "Demonstration," I said. He looked at me. For the first time, I saw how exhausted he was. Sweat darkened the front of his shirt. His eyes were red, and one cheek twitched each time the computer's fans changed speed. The donors needed to see a complete response, he said. Voice, movement, environmental integration, not blinking lights. So you staged an emergency. I staged a systems test. Marcus is concussed. That wasn't planned. Nora may have a broken ankle. Also not planned. The floodwater rose around our boots. Behind Caleb, the boiler chamber had begun filling faster. Lena pointed to the control board. The flush system is going to drown the lower level. It will stop when the tank cycles. When? He did not answer. A warning tone sounded from one battery unit. Caleb glanced at it. That was the first sign he no longer controlled everything. I followed his eyes to a red status light marked pneumatic pressure high. The clear tubes overhead shuddered. What happens if that goes? I asked. Nothing. The word came too quickly. Lena moved toward the keyboard. Caleb raised the pepper spray. Back away. She stopped. He gestured with the screwdriver. Both of you into the boiler chamber. And then, I asked. I reset the system, open the exits, and you tell them it was an electrical cascade. You think we're going to agree to that? I think you're standing in water beside damaged electrical equipment. The battery unit gave another tone. Higher, faster. From the monitor, Eli's voice came through the propagation microphone. Mara, Lena, can you hear me? Caleb looked at the screen. I swung the valve wrench, not at him, at the pneumatic tubing beside the rack. The wrench struck the manifold. Plastic cracked with a sharp pop. A line whipped loose. Compressed air blasted across the shelf, knocking the coffee cup and keyboard to the floor. Caleb sprayed. The stream caught Lena across the face. She screamed and dropped the pipe. I turned away, but the edge of the spray hit my right eye and mouth. Fire spread across my cheek. My throat closed. I coughed and stumbled into the rack. Caleb lunged for the control board. Lena, blinded, swung one arm wildly and caught his jacket. He shoved her. She fell backward into the water, striking her hip against the concrete wall. The pressure alarm became continuous. Overhead, pneumatic lines thrashed against their brackets. Caleb grabbed the loose tube and tried to reconnect it. I could barely see. Tears poured from my right eye, and my numb left hand failed twice before I found the wrench again. Stop, he shouted. You'll rupture the reservoir. I hit the manifold a second time. The plastic housing split. The result was not an explosion. It's worse in a quieter way. A metal fitting shot from the board and struck Caleb below the collarbone. He folded against the rack, gasping. The screwdriver dropped into the water. Sparks snapped from the damaged battery cable. The lights went out. For a second, we had only the blue glow of the monitors. Then one monitor died. The other flickered, showing Eli ramming the propagation door with the office chair while Nora covered her face. Lena crawled toward the keyboard. I can't see, she said. I can. That was generous. My right eye was useless. My left watered from the spray, but I could make out the screen. Caleb clutched his chest. Blood spread through his shirt where the fitting had entered. Not a spray, a dark patch. Don't pull it out, I said. He stared at me with an expression close to disbelief. Even then, I was trying to keep him alive. Lena found the keyboard by touch. Emergency release menu. I wiped my left eye against my shoulder and read the screen. There were tabs for audio capture, pneumatic cues, camera routing, access control, irrigation override, and ventilation. All unauthorized. Click access, Lena said. I did. A password prompt appeared. Caleb laughed weakly. You need my key. He pointed to a small hardware token clipped inside his jacket. I moved toward him. He grabbed the screwdriver from the water. Electric current had already tripped, or the insulated handle protected him. Either way, he raised it. Stay back. Breathing came in short, wet pulls. Caleb, I said, you're bleeding into your chest. You need an ambulance. I need the files. Open the doors. The files first. Behind us, Marcus shouted from the boiler chamber. The water had reached the edge of the raised pad. The battery rack sparked again. A flame appeared inside the lower unit, small and orange behind a vent grill. We had seconds before smoke filled the tunnel. Lena tore off her raincoat and pressed it over her face. Mara. I understood. I stepped toward Caleb. He jabbed with the screwdriver. I caught his wrist with my good hand and drove my shoulder into him. Pain tore down my left arm. We struck the shelving together. The monitors jumped. Caleb's cap fell into the water. He was stronger than me, even injured, but he was losing air. His grip weakened. Lena came from the side and wrapped the raincoat around his arm, pinning it against the rack. He kicked her knee. She cried out, but held on. I ripped the hardware token from his jacket. Caleb slid down the shelf. The fitting remained lodged near his collarbone. His lips had begun turning pale. Don't leave me, he said. It was the first honest thing he had said. I won't. I inserted the token. The menu opened. Release all fire doors. I clicked it. Nothing happened. A red message appeared. Network controller offline. Local reset required. Where? Lena demanded. Caleb pointed weakly toward the boiler chamber. Vent panel. Annual chain bracket. The old controls had been tied into the override. We dragged Caleb with us. There was no time to be careful. His boots bumped over the threshold. He groaned once and then stopped making sound. Smoke followed from the equipment recess. Marcus had pulled himself onto the first catwalk step. Water covered the boiler pad. The chains, I said. Lena could not climb. Pepper spray streamed from her eyes, and one knee buckled when she stood. Marcus could not climb. That left me. The catwalk stairs were wet steel. I climbed one-handed. 5 steps. 10. My shoulders shifted with a sickening click when I reached for the rail. I nearly fell. Below, Lena shouted instructions from memory. Red chain opens the west vents. Yellow releases the smoke louvers. Pull red first. The chains hung over the catwalk, each looped through a locking cleat. I grabbed the red one. It did not move. A green plant tie had been threaded through the cleat. I tore at it with my fingers. My left hand would not close. My right eye burned so badly I kept losing depth. Below, the water reached Caleb's waist where he lay against the pad. Smoke rolled through the tunnel arch. Mara, Marcus shouted. I bit through the plant tie. The plastic stretched between my teeth, bitter and dirty, then snapped. I pulled the red chain. Once, twice. The mechanism resisted. On the third pull, something released overhead with a deep boom. Far above us, roof vents began opening across the seasonal house. the pressure change moved through the tunnel. Air rushed upward through shafts and ducts, drawing smoke away from the boiler chamber. The yellow chain released the smoke louvers. The final chain, marked with a faded black stripe, reset the fire doors. I pulled it until my shoulder gave out. There was a loud clunk from the north corridor. Then another. The loading dock shutters began to rise. Daylight appeared at the far end of the cross corridor, first as a thin gray line, then a widening rectangle reflected in the floodwater. No savior rushed in. No emergency crew was waiting, just morning light. We still had to carry 2 injured men and a half-blinded woman through rising water. It took all of us who could move. Marcus crawled until Lena and I got under his arms. I dragged Caleb by his jacket collar, stopping twice because he stopped breathing. The second time, I tilted his head and gave him 2 breaths while Lena shouted that the smoke was getting thicker. He started again with a choking gasp. We reached the loading stairs. The magnetic lock had released. Outside, the service yard was empty. Lena found 1 bar of signal near the fence and called 911. Eli broke through the north propagation door 6 minutes later after the access controls reset. He pushed Nora into the yard in the office chair, both of them wet with sweat and streaked with potting soil. The first fire engine arrived 11 minutes after Lena's call. By then, Caleb was unconscious. Marcus was vomiting beside the loading dock. Nora's ankle had swollen purple above her shoe. Lena could see shapes, but not faces. I sat on the pavement with my left arm hanging uselessly and listened to the roof vents grown open above the conservatory. Inside the seasonal house, the foxgloves had collapsed. Without pneumatic pressure, softened soil and repeated forced bending had broken most of the stems. They lay across the mulch in a rough arc around the hidden speakers. Not listening, not learning, just damaged plants arranged by a damaged man who had known exactly how much strangeness people would accept before they questioned themselves. The conflict was over. The systems were shut down. The doors were open. Caleb was in custody as soon as doctors stabilized him. But when a paramedic asked me to state my name and explain what had happened, I hesitated. Not because I had forgotten, because through an open vent above us, one of the dying speakers played a final corrupted fragment from its failing battery. My voice said, "I know that now." The paramedic asked me the same question 3 times. "What's your name?" "Mara Voss." "Where are you?" "North Shore Botanical Conservatory." "What day is it?" I gave him the date. Then he started over. I understood why. I had been exposed to pepper spray, dragged 2 injured men through a flooded basement, and climbed a steel staircase with a shoulder that was no longer sitting correctly in its socket. I was shaking hard enough that the paper blanket around me made a constant dry rattling sound. Still, each repetition felt personal. By the 3rd round, I heard impatience in my own voice. "Mara Voss, North Shore Botanical Conservatory. Thursday." The paramedic, a broad man with a shaved head and gentle hands, did not react. "Good," he said. "I know it's irritating. I need to know your answers stay the same." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else from the ambulance. Your answers stay the same. They took me to a hospital in Milwaukee with Lena and Marcus in separate vehicles. Nora went in the first ambulance because her ankle had begun to look wrong in a way even she could no longer dismiss. Eli remained at the conservatory to speak with firefighters and give police the phone he had used to record the foxgloves moving. Caleb was transported under police supervision. Nobody told me whether he was alive until nearly 5 hours later. My shoulder was dislocated and partially torn. The doctor reduced it under sedation, which meant there was a stretch of afternoon I could not account for. One moment I was staring at a ceiling tile with a rust-colored water stain near the sprinkler head. The next, my arm was strapped against my chest, and my mouth tasted like pennies. A nurse had written the time on the whiteboard. 2:46 p.m. I stared at it too long. "You're okay," she said. "I know. You were sedated. I know that too." She paused. "Do you want me to explain what happened while you were out?" "Yes." She did, slowly and without talking down to me. I made her repeat the medication names. Then I asked where my phone was, checked the call log, and read the same text from Eli 4 times. NORAS out of surgery. MARCUS awake. Lena can't see. Caleb alive. Police want statements when we're CLEARED. I should have felt relief. What I felt was embarrassment that I needed the message to remain on the screen while I processed it. The hospital smelled of hand sanitizer, overheated linens, and cafeteria coffee. Carts rattled past the doorway. Somewhere nearby, a child cried in short, exhausted bursts. It was all painfully ordinary. That helped. Lena was discharged that evening with chemical irritation to both eyes, bruising along her hip, and a sprained knee. Her vision cleared enough to read by the following morning, though bright light caused headaches for weeks. Marcus remained overnight for observation. His scans showed no skull fracture or brain bleed, but the concussion was significant. He remembered hearing my voice in the corridor. He remembered turning near the water treatment room. He did not remember falling. That gap became important. The police interviewed each of us separately. 2 detectives came to my hospital room just after 7. One was Detective Aaron Pike, 44, male, a patient man with thinning brown hair, and a habit of pausing before every question, as if deciding whether it was worth asking. The other was Detective Sophia Alvarez, 39, female, who spoke less and wrote constantly in a narrow black notebook. They did not ask whether flowers could recognize voices. They asked about doors, wires, keys, timelines, who had access to the building, who knew Walter would be late, who knew the camera locations, who had installed the network switches. When had I first seen Caleb? Had he ever threatened anyone? Had I touched the screwdriver? Had Lena struck him? I intentionally damaged the pneumatic system. That last question made my stomach tight. I hid it because he had pepper spray and a screwdriver. Before or after he sprayed Dr. Sutter? Pike asked. Before the first spray, I hit the tubing. After he sprayed us, I hit the manifold. Why? To stop the system. Did you know it might rupture? He told me after I hit it the first time. Alvarez looked up from her notebook. Then you struck it again. Yes. The room seemed to narrow. I heard Caleb's voice. You signed off on it. I heard Nora telling me I understood the injury form, not the plants. I heard my father insisting the doors in his house had been replaced. Yes, I repeated. I struck it again. Pike nodded once. He did not accuse me of anything. That was almost worse. They already had enough physical evidence to establish that Caleb had altered the conservatory systems. Fire investigators found unauthorized connections between the resonance equipment and the building's environmental controls. Police recovered hidden cameras, duplicated access cards, cut alarm wires, door wedges, plant ties, the mannequin arm, Marcus's pepper spray, and a laptop containing voice model files. The folder with my name on it held over 47 hours of audio. Most of it was boring. That detail appeared in the preliminary police report. 47 hours of Mara Voss speaking, coughing, humming, giving instructions, reading plant labels aloud, and making private comments in empty rooms. The files went back almost 3 months. Caleb had captured other staff voices too, but mine was the most complete. The microphone placement in the seasonal house favored the Western service aisle, where I worked alone most mornings. My speech was clear, repetitive, and rarely overlapped with visitors. Clean training data. That was the phrase used by one of the university's lawyers. The university suspended the entire research team within 24 hours, though only Caleb was charged. Their public statement described him as an individual who had acted far beyond the approved scope of the installation. The conservatory's first statement called the incident an electrical emergency complicated by unauthorized equipment. Neither statement mentioned my voice. By the third day, local reporters had found Eli's video. The headline that spread fastest was, "Botanical garden employee says flowers responded to her speech before sabotage discovery." It was accurate enough to be humiliating. People online slowed the footage down, drew arrows around the stems, and argued over whether the plants moved because of air pressure, magnets, wires, or editing. One video received 500,000 views in 2 days. A man with a channel devoted to unexplained biology called me a reluctant whistleblower. Another accused the conservatory of staging the entire event for publicity. The flowers became more interesting than the injured people. Nora hated that. She underwent surgery for a fractured fibula and torn ankle ligaments. When I visited her, she was home in a ground floor apartment, her leg elevated on 3 mismatched pillows. A walker stood beside the couch. The television was on mute, showing footage of the conservatory gates. "They keep calling them rare flowers," she said. "The foxgloves, the alpine collection." A local anchor stood in front of the closed visitor entrance, while text along the bottom of the screen reported that several exotic plants had been lost. Nora pointed the remote at the television. 23 specimens, she said. 7 critically endangered in cultivation. 4 probably replaceable. 19 years of propagation, records contaminated by heat and irrigation failure. "I'm sorry, not your fault." It was the first time she had said that. I sat in the chair across from her. My arm was still in a sling. The skin around my right eye had stopped burning, but it remained dry and red. Some of it was my responsibility, I said. No, I agreed to the test. You agreed to play a recording near a flower bed. You did not agree to a man rewiring half the building. I should have stopped it earlier. Nora's mouth tightened. That is an attractive idea, she said. It means there was a moment when everything could have been prevented if only you had been smarter. I looked at her. There usually isn't, she continued. Mostly, there are small bad decisions made by different people, and one person who knows how to use them. She turned the television off. The apartment became quiet except for the refrigerator motor and traffic on the wet street outside. Lena approved too much without reading enough, Nora said. The university ignored warnings because the grant looked good. Facilities let contractors work unsupervised. Marcus followed a voice instead of calling for backup. I tried to save trays with a broken ankle. Eli nearly attacked a rat with pruning loppers. Despite myself, I laughed. Nora smiled briefly. And you, she said, have a habit of believing doubt is the same thing as responsibility. That one stayed too. Marcus had a harder recovery than the doctors initially predicted. He developed headaches, dizziness, and trouble concentrating. He could not return to security work for several months. When I visited him at the rehabilitation clinic, he made jokes about failing balance tests, but he asked me twice whether I believed Caleb had struck him. I believe you were injured while following the recording, I said. That's not what I asked. No, he waited. I don't know whether he hit you. Marcus looked toward the window. It was snowing lightly outside, though the ground was too warm for it to stick. The valve wheel had my blood on it, he said. I know. He could have pushed me. Yes. Or I could have walked into it in the dark. Yes. He nodded as if I had confirmed something. I hate that, he said. I know. Caleb claimed the same uncertainty. Through his attorney, he admitted installing unauthorized equipment and disabling certain safety systems, but denied intending to harm anyone. He said the cart moved because the floor was wet. Marcus fell. The cold room door opened when a delayed backup relay engaged. The pumps activated during a software cascade. The loading shutters dropped because of a fire control fault. Each explanation contained enough truth to sound reasonable in isolation. Together, they formed the shape of what he had done. Prosecutors charged him with multiple counts, including reckless endangerment, unlawful surveillance, criminal damage, and interference with fire safety systems. The case did not go to trial quickly. Cases like that do not. There were hearings, expert reports, arguments over university liability, and long stretches when nothing seemed to happen. Lena resigned before the board could decide whether to remove her. She sent the staff a formal email accepting responsibility for inadequate oversight. 2 weeks later, she sent me a separate message. It contained no apology, only a photograph of the Western foxglove bed after cleanup. The hidden tubes had been removed. The soil had been replaced. 6 empty spaces remained where the tallest plants had stood. Below the photograph, she wrote, I keep thinking about the moment I asked you to make the call. I should not have made uncertainty your burden. I read the message several times before replying. I did not tell her it was fine. It was not. The conservatory remained closed for 11 weeks. Inspectors tested the electrical system, replaced damaged controls, reviewed access logs, and opened walls where Caleb had run cable. Every room was checked for cameras and microphones. The resonance equipment was removed under police supervision and stored as evidence. The foxglove display was composted. The seasonal house reopened in midsummer with a collection of native prairie plants. No interactive lights, no speakers, just coneflowers, milkweed, blazing star, and signs explaining pollinator habitats. I returned on reduced duties. For the first month, I refused to work alone. Nobody challenged me. Eli met me at the staff entrance every morning with 2 coffees. He had become quieter since the basement. He still joked, but he no longer volunteered for every unpleasant task, and he checked locked doors before turning his back on them. One morning, he found me standing beside the new western bed. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes." He waited. I appreciated that he did not ask again. The prairie plants moved constantly. Their stems were thinner than foxgloves, and the ventilation fans stirred them even at low speed. Nothing about their motion looked intentional once you understood how many small forces acted on a plant inside a greenhouse. Airflow, moisture, uneven growth, vibration through the floor, heat from a visitor's body. The world was full of movements that became frightening only after someone assigned them meaning. I began seeing a therapist who specialized in workplace trauma. She asked me to stop keeping a daily list of forgotten words and misplaced objects. I told her the list helped me detect changes. She asked whether it had ever detected one. I said no. She asked what it had done instead. I did not answer. Eventually, I threw it away, not all at once. I deleted the notes from my phone, then removed the notebook from my bedside table, then put it in a kitchen drawer. Weeks later, I found it while looking for tape and dropped it into the recycling bin. I stood over the bin for nearly a minute. Then I left it there. By autumn, I could work alone for short periods again. I still did not talk to the plants. That was the most visible change. Before Caleb, I had narrated tasks without noticing. I would say, "You need water," or "Let's get you out of there," or simply read labels aloud. Afterward, words felt like objects I might accidentally leave behind. The conservatory was quieter without my voice. One morning in October, I arrived before sunrise to inspect a leak in the seasonal roof. Rain tapped across the glass in thousands of soft impacts. The prairie display had been replaced with chrysanthemums for the fall show, rows of rust, yellow, and dark red blooms arranged around the reflecting pool. The building was empty. I knew it was empty because I had checked the schedule, the alarm log, and the staff parking area. I unlocked the western service aisle. The ventilation fans were already running. I crouched beside a moisture sensor and found a loose connector. Ordinary, replaceable. I tightened it, wiped my hands on my trousers, and stood. A flower head shifted near my shoulder. I did not move. Rainwater ran through the gutter above me with a hollow, rushing sound. The chrysanthemum shifted again. Then another. A sequence down the bed. 1, 2, 3. I looked toward the vents. The nearest fan oscillated from left to right. The flower heads moved as its airflow reached them. That was all. I watched the fan complete another sweep. The same stems trembled in the same order. Cause, effect, repeatable. I let out a breath. Then a speaker clicked beneath the bed. Just once. The installation had been removed. Every cable had been traced. Every wall had been inspected. I crouched and looked under the foliage. There was no speaker. The click came again, closer this time. I followed the sound to the irrigation panel and found a mechanical relay switching as the roof sensor activated the drainage pump. Ordinary, explainable. I stood alone in the dim greenhouse and laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Good morning," I said. The words came out rough from disuse. Nothing happened. The chrysanthemums remained turned toward the artificial lights. The pump ran. Rain moved over the roof. Somewhere beyond the glass, a delivery van reversed through the parking lot, producing 3 electronic beeps. I finished my inspection and left the service aisle. At the door, I checked behind me once. Only once. One red chrysanthemum near the end of the bed was trembling. The fan had already turned away. I watched it until the movement stopped. Then I wrote "check airflow west bed" on the task sheet and went to unlock the public doors. And that's the end of today's chilling tale. If you enjoyed this story and want more nights full of suspense, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to Mia Horror Stories, and turn on the bell so you never miss a scare. I've got plenty more stories waiting for you, so stick around and check out the other videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and don't look behind